Chapter 2063. However, when Xiaohua extended his hand to grab the tail of the demonic spear, a fair and jade-like hand also appeared in his field of vision. It was precisely grabbing the tail of the demonic spear. What made Xiaohua very embarrassed was that the two of them were grabbing the tail of the demonic spear. Huh! Xiaohua was stunned. This jade hand was obviously a female cultivator. When he turned his head to look, he saw a similarly short and thin woman looking at him with the same stunned expression. Xiaohua wanted to withdraw his hand, but he didn't dare to. He was afraid that if he withdrew his hand, the female cultivator would take the devil spear away. Obviously, the female cultivator also had the same idea. She placed one hand on the devil spear and stared at Xiaohua, unwilling to admit defeat. Fellow Taoist. Xiaohua coughed. He looked at the somewhat pale early-stage foundation establishment female cultivator and said, "Why didn't fellow Taoist bid a moment ago, but instead made a move now?" Fellow Taoist also didn't bid, so why did you make a move now? The female cultivator also questioned. It came too late. Xiaohua touched his nose with his other hand and smiled bitterly. Then he looked at the devil spear on the left and said, "There are so many devil spears on this high platform, why did fellow Taoist choose this one? Why don't you choose something else?" "Yes, there are so many devil spears on this high platform, why did fellow Taoist choose this one? Why don't you choose something else?" The female cultivator also said. Alas, Xiaohua sighed. He suddenly raised his head, looked to the left and shouted, "Manager!" Oh! The female cultivator was stunned. She also raised her eyebrows and looked over, but at this moment, she suddenly felt her hand slip. The devil spear's tail that she was holding tightly was actually forcefully pulled away by Xiaohua. She naturally grabbed with her hand, and Xiaohua also felt a great force. She wanted to grab the devil spear's tail, but Xiaohua used a little force and easily pulled the devil spear's tail away. However, Xiaohua was still a little surprised. Looking at the thin and unremarkable female cultivator, he didn't expect this female cultivator to have such great strength. The female cultivator didn't see the empty high platform. She knew that she had been fooled. She hurriedly stepped forward, stretched out her hand, and used an extremely beautiful move to snatch the devil spear's tail away. But how could Xiaohua let her have her way? He raised his left hand and swiftly struck her wrist. At the same time, he slapped his storage bag. Pa! Xiaohua's fist struck the female cultivator's hand, which had quickly turned into a palm. At the same time, the devil spear's tail also disappeared from his hand. The female cultivator was stunned for a moment, but then her face turned as cold as ice. She coldly said, "Are you still a man? Is this how you treat a female cultivator?" "Of course I'm a man." I's dual cultivation partner was the clearest about this. "Fellow Taoist doesn't need to worry about me," Xiaohua said with a smile. "As for the treatment of female cultivators, I don't have enough experience. Please forgive me if I've been rude." "You." The female cultivator said the word "you" again. Then she looked around and saw that there were already people paying attention to them. She stomped her feet and said angrily, "I already had my eyes on this item. How could you snatch it away from me?" "How about this?" Xiaohua nodded. He looked at the high platform and said, "Since the ruler is here, let's let this devil tool bid again. I came late just now. Let's start again?" This time, the female cultivator didn't fall for his trick. She sighed and said, "If I had spirit stones, would I have waited until now?" Xiaohua smiled and pointed at it. "Isn't this the same as the starting price? You could have just bid at that time." The female cultivator looked at Xiaohua with her starry eyes and nodded slightly. "Fellow Taoist, you really just arrived." Then, she explained, "The current bid is already 50% of the original price. In the previous rounds, it was 90% at the beginning, then 80% until now. I've always been afraid that someone would snatch it away. Now I can finally afford to bid, but you snatched it away. Moreover, if you snatched it away from me, this item, I'm afraid I'd really have to bid again." The female cultivator said faintly. "I've been looking for this item for a long time. I came to Bright City this time precisely for this item. Is this item very important to fellow Taoist? Xiaohua asked curiously. A trace of vigilance flashed through the female cultivator's eyes, and she asked, "If I say it's important, can you give it to me?" Xiaohua shook his head slightly. "I don't know yet." At this moment, a brilliance flashed on the high platform, and Zai Qi's figure slowly emerged. Obviously, a new round of bidding was about to begin. "Forget it." The female cultivator glared fiercely at Xiaohua, then turned around and left. Xiaohua shrugged, took out spirit stones, placed them on a jade plate, and slowly returned to his seat. Zai Qi went up to the high platform and glanced at the things floating around. Almost no one moved, but he remained calm and composed. He formed hand seals, and with a flash of brilliance, all the items fell on the high platform and disappeared. At the same time, the demonic tools on the edge of the high platform also disappeared without a trace. All right, there's still 10 minutes before the last round of bidding. Fellow Taoist who still wants to consign something for sale, please hurry up. Zai Qi said with a smile. The items consigned by fellow Taoist will be appraised by my Haoming City's dedicated consecrators. It's absolutely fair. However, fellow Taoist must give 10% of the items to my Haoming City. Xiaohua sat on his seat, listless as he listened to Zai Qi's nonsense. However, his mind was thinking about that female cultivator just now. If this female cultivator was concerned about the demonic tools, it would be normal, but why did she care about the demonic spear's tail? Moreover, this female cultivator's strength isn't ordinary. She's the strongest cultivator I've ever seen. Oh! Xiaohua thought and placed the demonic spear's tip, shaft, and tail together. Sure enough, there was still a section of the spear shaft missing. So that's how it is. Xiaohua realized. This female cultivator should still have a section of the spear shaft, so she wanted to match it with the demonic spear's tail. Oh no, I offended that female cultivator just now. I'm afraid it won't be easy to get the demonic spear shaft. Is there any other fellow Taoist who wants to consign something for sale? Zai Qi finally asked. Xiaohua's heart suddenly moved. He took out a very damaged magic tool from the storage pouch he got from the golden core cultivator in the ink cloud black forest and threw it on the table next to him. A brilliance flashed on the table, and the magic tool disappeared. That golden core cultivator must have gone to the ink cloud black forest to pick up the items. Maybe he even picked them up for a long time. The items in these two storage pouches are strange. The jade slips are easy to understand, but the magic tools are troublesome. No matter how I look at them, I can't figure out their origins. Why don't I ask the Haoming City's consecrators to help me take a look? Xiaohua thought to himself as he watched the brilliance on the table disappear. Soon, the first items consigned for sale appeared in front of Zai Qi and were placed on several jade plates. Zai Qi pointed his hand and one of the jade plates flew in front of him. Zai Qi opened the silk cloth and scanned it with his divine sense. He laughed. Hee, I knew it. There are still some fellow Taoists who have good things but won't take them out until the last moment. The quality of this magic tool isn't bad. It's not much inferior to the magic tools in the previous auction. Chapter 2064. Soon after, Zai Qi quoted a number of spirit stones according to the price on the jade plate. Then, he gave a simple explanation of the magic tool's function and origin. And it's really not bad. Xiaohua naturally had no interest in this magic tool, but after listening to Zai Qi's tireless explanation of the magic tool's ins and outs, and hearing that the price was appropriate, he couldn't help but nod inwardly. This magic tool obviously caused a small stir. Many foundation establishment cultivators began to slowly bid, and the number of spirit stones increased. This made Xiaohua puzzled. It can't be, right? No matter what, it's just a magic tool. Everyone here is a foundation establishment cultivator. Even if they don't have one, won't their sect give one? Why must they compete like this? But then Xiaohua understood. Although the sect would give magic tools, it also depended on the sect. Not to mention the state of Shi's three cultivation sects, the Imperial Thunder sect and the Rinsing Flower sect might be able to give each of them one. But the problem was, what about the other sex? At least Xiao Hua knew that the previous Shang Huaming didn't have this strength. Of course, he couldn't rule out the possibility that these foundation establishment cultivators were bidding for these magic tools for their own juniors. Thinking of his juniors, Xiao Hua was a bit worried. He had promised his eldest senior brother that he would give Xiang Zhili a great magical ability, but what magical ability? How would he explain it when the time came? Soon after, Zai Qi bid for many other strange things, but Xiao Hua didn't care. What he wanted was a cultivation method for refining the body or tempering the bones. His space didn't lack these odds and ends. All right, this old man has another good thing here. Zai Qi clapped his hands in disappointment. The silk covering the jade plate was removed, and a light cyan jade slip appeared in front of everyone's eyes. Cultivation method? Xiao Hua's eyes lit up, and he couldn't help but straighten his back slightly. His movement wasn't obvious, but in the eyes of a certain person, it was clear. This jade slip doesn't record any cultivation method, nor is it about refining tools or creating talismans. Zai Qi looked at the jade slip in his hand and said with a smile. Oh, everyone was disappointed, and Xiao Hua even sat down. However, this is also a special item that appeared in my auction today. Zai Qi seemed to be whetting everyone's appetites. After a short pause, he continued, this jade slip contains a description in the Devil Realm's language. This is something that is rarely seen in auctions in Haoming City. Tisk, a cultivator sneered rudely. Senior, you're exaggerating. What do we not have at the auction in Haoming City? Even if the written descriptions in the demon realm were scarce, what was the use? We are not demonic cultivators, nor can we wield demonic artifacts. What use do we have for this thing? Hee, fellow Taoist, please calm down. Zai Qi looked at the cultivator whose cultivation was lower than his and didn't get angry. He said, I only said that this thing was rare, I didn't mention the price. However, as the manager spoke, he was a bit stunned. He scratched his head and said self-deprecatingly, I was wrong. This item was actually set by the fellow Taoist who put it up for sale. Haha, and the price isn't low. As he spoke, the Chancellor spoke a number that was definitely not low. Is there something wrong with this guy? The cultivator who spoke muttered, which foundation establishment cultivator would take out so many spirit stones for this thing? However, before he could finish speaking, a voice said, I want it. When everyone's divine senses swept over, they found that the person who spoke was Xiao Hua. At this moment, Xiao Hua was overjoyed. It was really like someone giving him a pillow when he was feeling sleepy. Wasn't he lacking a jade slip that could read thousands of characters in the demon realm? When the cultivator saw that an early-stage foundation establishment cultivator like him actually stood up to bid, he could only shake his head and sit down. Xiao Hua stood there with a smile. He was a bit impatient. He knew very well that although the price of the spirit stones just now was lower than the previous magic tools and medicinal pills, it was definitely not low for this kind of almost useless jade slip. It could even be said to be very high. Who would bid against him for this? Moreover, Xiao Hua didn't think that there were many cultivators present who had more spirit stones in their storage pouches than he did. However, without waiting for him to stand for a moment, without waiting for the Chancellor to ask another question, he heard a clear voice laughing not far away. Sure enough, fellow Taoist knows his stuff. I have no choice but to raise the price. Huh? It's actually that female cultivator just now. Xiao Hua was stunned at first, but after a sweep with his divine sense, he immediately understood. This female cultivator also wants the demon tool, so of course she wants this jade slip. Immediately, Xiao Hua raised the price without hesitation. And that female cultivator also seemed to be determined. She added spirit stones bit by bit. In less than half a cup of tea's time, the price of this jade slip had reached an extremely high level. However, Xiao Hua was still indifferent. This number of spirit stones was still very low. However, hearing that female cultivator's calm and unruffled bid, Xiao Hua was a bit bewildered. He secretly said, just now, this female cultivator said that she didn't have many spirit stones and wanted to take advantage of the situation to get the demon spear shaft. How come she has spirit stones now? Could it be that she was lying to me? Alas, I don't have many spirit stones left. At this time, that female cultivator said regretfully, I can only add up to this point. If fellow Taoist raises the price again, I can only give up. Xiaohua frowned, rolled his eyes, and cupped his hands. So it's like this. As the saying goes, a good man doesn't fight with a woman. Since that's the case, I can't snatch what you like even more. I won't raise the price. This jade slip belongs to fellow Taoist. Ah? The female cultivator obviously didn't expect Xiaohua to give up so easily. She was astonished, stamping her feet, and asked, You? How can you not raise the price? Xiaohua laughed, and everyone else also laughed. I gave this jade slip to you, and you're actually not happy? You even want I to raise the price? What kind of logic is this? That female cultivator said, a few times, but she was also helpless and could only sit down. Alright, this item belongs to this fellow Taoist. Zai Qi smiled and pointed his finger. But right after that, Zai Qi was also a little stunned. However, a faint smile appeared on the corner of his mouth, and he clapped his hand. That jade slip disappeared, but a light flashed next to the female cultivator. Obviously, it was transferred to the female cultivator's table. Soon after, Zai Qi waved his hand, and a jade bottle appeared in midair. Zai Qi glanced at it and was even more surprised. He said with a smile, Strange things happen every year, but this year, my Haoming city has the most. This foundation building pill has become increasingly rare in the auction in recent years, just like the exquisite grass used to concoct foundation building pills. It's getting rarer every year. Every sect, and even every cultivator treasures this item so that they can keep it for their own disciples. The previous 2 bottles of foundation building pills already caused a sensation, and in the last round of the auction, the penultimate item to be auctioned is actually a foundation building pill? Foundation building pill? It's really a foundation building pill? Who would still take it out? Several cultivators around Xiaohua unconsciously stood up. Why do you say that? Xiaohua was stunned. He remembered that when he participated in the auction last time, foundation building pills were indeed rare, but it seemed that they weren't this rare. Listening to Zai Qi's tone, the number of foundation building pills had actually become fewer and fewer in the past 10 years? Alright, these are 2 foundation building pills. The starting price is 100 top-grade spirit stones. Zai Qi stated the starting price that Xiaohua knew was 5 times the starting price. Good. Xiaohua immediately understood. No wonder when he entered Haoming City that day and gave Bai Fengliang several foundation building pills, that guy's face was filled with gratitude. It turned out, in the current cultivation world, foundation building pills were actually so rare. 850. Xiaohua had just started to sigh with emotion when the price of foundation building pills soared by 50%. Crazy. Xiaohua shook his head and sat steadily on his seat. Looking at everyone's eagerness, he had other plans in his mind. In the end, the 2 foundation building pills were sold for 200 top-grade spirit stones. This made many foundation building cultivators sigh. Fellow Taoist. Xiaohua thought for a moment and cupped his hands towards the cultivator beside him. I don't quite understand. Why are these foundation building pills so precious? When did fellow Taoist build his foundation? That cultivator didn't answer but asked instead. I'm ashamed. It's already been 40 years. Xiaohua smiled apologetically. Fellow Taoist hasn't taken in a disciple yet, right? That's right. That's right. The cultivator nodded and said, since fellow Taoist doesn't use foundation building pills, you naturally wouldn't have thought that foundation building pills would suddenly become scarce in the past 10 years. The question is, why are they scarce? Xiaohua asked, puzzled. That cultivator shook his head slightly and said in a low voice, I heard some vague news. Fellow Taoist looks familiar and feels like old friends at first sight. That's why I revealed it to you. You can't tell others. Xiaohua's expression turned cold and he said in all seriousness, I will definitely keep my mouth shut. I heard that the heavenly Tao has changed greatly. My Tao sect has already reached its end. The ancient celestials will once again revive from overseas. In the future, it might be the world of the celestials. The cultivator was even more serious. The spiritual herbs and spiritual fruits that we use for cultivation are all different from before. All the medicinal pills that are required for cultivation can no longer be refined. Therefore, not only have the prices of spiritual herbs and other things increased, even the important medicinal pills like foundation-building pills have been hoarded by cultivators and won't be revealed in the auction again. Ah? Xiao Hua was stunned. However, without waiting for him to speak, that cultivator said proudly, not only that, the spirit stone veins have also undergone great changes. They can no longer be used for cultivation. Many large sects are crazily fighting over spirit stone veins outside. These spirit stones will also become scarce in the future. Xiao Hua originally didn't want to believe this cultivator's words, but he had seen Shanghua sect snatching the spirit stone veins with his own eyes. He could not believe these words. Seeing Xiao Hua's bewildered appearance, that cultivator turned his head very disdainfully. That's right. Such ordinary cautiousness scared an early-stage foundation establishment cultivator into a daze. How could he not be proud? Fellow Taoists, this is the last item in the final round of this auction. The Chancellor, who was on the high platform, ignored Xiao Hua's thoughts and said loudly, generally speaking, the consecrators of the Haoming City will save the most valuable items for last. I'm afraid that the foundation-building elixir just now was done by them. Chapter 2065. Come, let's see what the final item is. Zai Qi lifted the silk cloth and glanced at the jade slip on the jade plate. He was stunned. After a moment of hesitation, he sent a voice transmission to someone behind him. After confirming, he smiled bitterly and said, "Even I was surprised by this item. I've made a fool of myself." Then he picked up the jade slip, looked at it a few times, and said, "Allow this poor Taoist to keep everyone guessing. What is this? Could it be that this item has an origin?" A cultivator stood up and smiled. "Can I take a look?" "Of course." Zai Qi waved his hand, and the jade plate flew to the cultivator. The cultivator picked up the rhombus-shaped magic tool with 4 missing corners and pondered for a long time. He shook his head and said, "The spiritual energy fluctuations in this item are weak. It must be seriously damaged. It will take a lot of effort to repair it. Moreover, one's spiritual sense can only see the surface. It seems to be able to penetrate it, but there's a faint barrier that prevents it from entering. I can't see what kind of magic tool it is." The other cultivators were also very interested, but they couldn't see any clues. "Let me take a look." A cultivator in a mesmerizing robe said in a deep voice. "Let me take a look first." Similarly, another mesmerizing robe cultivator sitting on the other side said in unison. Then, the first mesmerizing robe cultivator waved his hand, and the jade plate flew in his direction. It seemed like it was about to break free from Zai Qi's control. At the same time, the other mesmerizing robe cultivator stretched out his hand and made a grabbing motion. The jade plate also flew in his direction. "Seniors." Zai Qi frowned and said, "Please let go. This item has been appraised by our Haoming City's consecrators. It's a famous magic tool from 1,000 years ago called the Mist Puppet. If you like it, please bid." "What? A magic tool?" Xiao Hua was stunned. Obviously, this was the so-called magic tool he threw into the transportation array on the table. Mist Puppet? This is the mist puppet that is said to be able to create an illusion array on its own? A cultivator looked at the damaged mist puppet in disbelief. "That's right." The Zai Qi nodded. However, the corrosion on its surface is particularly severe. Not only does it look completely different from before, even the outer formation has been destroyed. According to the consecrator's speculation, it should be because the owner of the Black Mist Tree had died in the Black Mist Forest, and the Black Mist Tree had been corroded by the Black Mist Sand for thousands of years. It is also because of this that Mo Bao, who has not been seen in the Black Forest for thousands of years, has blown this item out of the Black Forest, allowing it to see the light of day again. Since it's the Wu Qi, this poor Taoist won't say too much about how powerful it is. The core of this magic treasure is as good as new. If any fellow Taoist can repair it, it will be able to regain the power of the Wuqi from 1,000 years ago. As the Chancellor spoke, he took the Wuqi into his hand and reported a number of spirit stones that shocked Xiaohua. That's right, this was a transcendent artifact. Although it was damaged, its core was still intact. It was much more useful than those fragments and so on. How could it not have a good starting price? Hearing the number of spirit stones, the stingy Xiaohua was somewhat regretful. He had only thought this was an ordinary magic tool. However, he immediately laughed inwardly. There are many similar items in this little master space. I'll take one out and test it out. I'll know that these things have their origins. In the future, I'll slowly find out how to use them. At worst, I'll take it out and bid for some spirit stones. That's better than not knowing its value, right? The mist puppet was indeed famous. Very quickly, the price reached a very high price. The crowd of Foundation establishment cultivators stopped and watched the two cultivators that the Chancellor called seniors bid. After the time it took to brew a cup of tea, the mist puppet was finally won by the second mist puppet cultivator. All right, fellow Taoists. After the mist puppet cultivator delivered the spirit stones, the Chancellor clapped his hand. The entire hall flashed with brilliance, and all the cultivators' tables lit up. A storage pouch naturally appeared on Xiaohua's table. Xiaohua reached out and put it into his bosom. After the brilliance flashed, the Chancellor said, "This time, the auction for Foundation establishment cultivators has come to an end. Thank you, fellow Taoists, for coming to my Haoming city. 5 years later, my Haoming city will still hold the auction for Foundation establishment cultivators. I welcome fellow Taoists to come again. In addition, fellow Taoists who consigned the mist puppet cultivators, your spirit stones have already been delivered. Please check and accept them. If there's anything inappropriate, please don't leave the auction. My Haoming city will help you deal with it." Immediately, the entire high platform radiated rays of light in all directions. All kinds of brilliance flashed, and rainbow bridges stretched out from the high platform to the feet of the cultivators. "Let's go!" Xiaohua sighed inwardly. He floated onto the nearest rainbow bridge, only to see the rainbow bridge slowly shrink. At this moment, Xiaohua heard a crisp and urgent voice say, "Fellow Taoist, please wait." Xiaohua turned around and saw that thin and weak-looking female cultivator. She was waving at him and seemed to want to fly over. Unfortunately, before she could fly, the Chancellor, who had disappeared a moment ago, appeared in front of her. He seemed to be looking for her. "Fellow Taoist, please wait for me outside. I have something to discuss with fellow Taoist." The female cultivator was somewhat embarrassed. After shouting at Xiaohua a few times, she turned around and spoke to the Chancellor. Xiaohua didn't respond. Obviously, the female cultivator wanted to get the devil spear tail from him, and Xiaohua absolutely wouldn't give it away. Xiaohua followed the rainbow bridge out of the auction. His expression changed as he waited. Xiaohua was somewhat hesitant. After thinking for a moment, he flew to the side of the city guard who was guarding the auction. Without waiting for him to speak, the city guard respectfully saluted and said, "Greetings, Senior. Is there anything I can help you with?" "Well, I don't understand." Xiaohua asked. "I specially came to Haoming City to look for some body-refining cultivation methods in this auction, but there wasn't a single one in the entire auction. Haoming City's auction doesn't live up to its name." The city guard was stunned. Obviously, he didn't expect Xiaohua to ask him such a question. Thus, after thinking for a moment, he smiled apologetically and said, "Junior wants to ask Senior. Does Senior want this cultivation method for your future nephew?" Xiaohua shook his head slightly. "This cultivation method is what I want to use." Hee, Senior must be joking with Junior." A smile appeared on the city guard's face as he said, "Senior is now in the Foundation establishment realm, and the Jindan Dao is right in front of you. As long as you cultivate according to this cultivation method, you won't be far from the Jindan Dao, and even the nascent soul realm is in sight. Why are you looking for a body-refining path? If Senior is thinking for your future nephew, Junior might be able to believe it." Hee, fellow Taoist really understands. Xiaohua changed his mind and said with a smile. Hee, Junior has seen a lot of things, that's all. The city guard was somewhat proud as he said, since it's a cultivation method used by aura refining disciples, it naturally has to be found in the auction for aura refining cultivators. Senior came to this auction for foundation establishment cultivators, so it's natural for you to use a bamboo basket to draw water. Chapter 2066. Not necessarily. Xiaohua said with a smile. Foundation building pills also appeared in the auction just now. Don't tell me foundation building pills aren't for aura refining disciples? The city guard replied confidently, Senior is a foundation building cultivator, so you must know the quality of foundation building pills and whether they can be used or not. But what about body refining cultivation techniques? Do you know if they're suitable for your disciples? I'm afraid you're the only one who knows this kind of cultivation technique, right? Ha, Xiaohua laughed. He clapped his hands and took out a few spirit stones, stuffed them into the city guard's hands, and said, Fellow Taoist is right. I'm really bad. The city guard reached out his hand without leaving a trace and caught the spirit stones. Soon after, he whispered a few words to Xiaohua through telepathy, making him beam with joy. Right at this moment, a figure rushed out of the auction very quickly. She looked all around with a somewhat anxious expression on her face. It was the strong but thin female cultivator from just now. Xiaohua had already regained his original appearance. Whether it was his face or figure, he had already changed. Only his Taoist robe hadn't been changed. The female cultivator first saw Xiaohua's Taoist robe. Her happy expression only flashed for a moment before it was replaced by heavy disappointment. City guard, have you seen? The female cultivator shouted at the city guard and described Xiaohua's disguised appearance. Senior, please no. The city guard was still respectful. Junior has never seen a senior with this kind of appearance. Oh, the female cultivator nodded and asked Xiaohua somewhat unwillingly, has fellow Taoist seen him before? That cultivator wore the same Taoist robe as fellow Taoist. Xiaohua's heart skipped a beat, and he said with a smile, I haven't seen him either. However, is there something fellow Taoist didn't say inside? How did you find him outside? Alas, the female cultivator sighed and said reluctantly, I have some matters to attend to. Right at this moment, a voice said, Qiao, is that guy here? Brother Ming, that cultivator disappeared a long time ago. The female cultivator called Qiao turned her head in disappointment. It's all Qiao's fault for acting on my own and provoking a senior from Haoming City. Alas, Xiaohua raised his head to look. A tall and sturdy man who was half a head taller than him slowly walked over. This cultivator was dressed strangely. His arms and legs were exposed, and his skin was covered with black hair. He was like a thick pillar. Ah, a middle foundation establishment cultivator? Xiaohua's eyes flashed and he looked at the female cultivator. This female cultivator doesn't seem to be a good person. I don't know what she's planning. As a result, Xiaohua dispelled the idea of continuing to collude with Qiao. He turned around and flew towards the residence of the aura refining cultivators. Forget it, Qiao. Since we can't find it, then forget it. The male cultivator smiled and said, There are so many demonic artifacts. You can just find another one and try to repair it. Why do you only want that one? Sigh, Brother Ming, you don't know, Qiao said as she flew. That demonic device has an extraordinary origin, and Qiao learned about it from the ancient records in her clan. If it wasn't for the fact that there was something special inside the demonic spear, Qiao wouldn't have been able to imagine it. How did a weapon that was recorded in ancient times fall into the hands of the demon realm? Furthermore, it has become a demonic artifact. So that's how it is. That male cultivator suddenly understood and smiled apologetically. How would I know about these things? Only a skilled craftsman like Qiao in the clan can look up the ancient records in the clan. Sai, let's go. Qiao sighed and said, Not only did we not get that demonic spear, but we also lost some spirit stones. In this way, there are some things that can't be exchanged. I understand now. That male cultivator slapped his forehead and said, Brother Ming, what did you think of? Qiao, asked curiously. The male cultivator said naively, since that guy snatched the demonic spear's tail from you, then he might have seen something. Maybe he also has the same broken spear as you. Qiao was speechless. Her thoughts were naturally the same as Xiaohua's. She also thought of the other party's situation, which was why she was determined to find Xiaohua. Let's go, Brother Ming. Let's go to the shops in Haoming City and see if there's anything that can be exchanged. Qiao said indifferently. A moment after Xiaohua and the others left, Yanyu flew over and very familiarly walked in front of the city guard. He quietly stuffed a few spirit stones into the guard's hand and whispered a few words. A trace of embarrassment appeared on the city guard's face, but after thinking for a moment, he answered with a smile. Hearing this, Yanyu's face showed a satisfied expression. Soon after, he handed over a few more spirit stones. Xiaohua flew into the area where the aura refining cultivators lived. Without waiting for the city guard to come over, just like before, several aura refining cultivators came over to strike up a conversation. Xiaohua smiled and said, I want to go to Yutian Paradise. Who among you knows? Sure enough, a seemingly quick-witted aura refining cultivator quickly raised his hand and said, Senior, this junior knows. Good, you take I there. Senior, please. After saying that aura refining cultivator led the way and flew up first. After flying for several breaths, that aura refining cultivator asked cautiously, Senior, what do you always want to go to Yutian Paradise to look for? Xiaohua smiled and said, Are you very familiar with Yutian Paradise? Hearing Xiaohua's response, a smile appeared on that cultivator's face and he answered, Yutian Paradise is specially set up by Haoming City for us aura refining cultivators. It's for our convenience. Soon after, he explained in detail, Senior, you must also know that Haoming City holds auctions of different scales every 5 years, every 10 years, and even every 100 years. However, we aura refining cultivators have a rather urgent need for medicinal pills, yellow talismans, spiritual plants, and so on. We can't compare to seniors who have a long lifespan, so we can wait. However, if it's an ordinary shop, it's difficult to distinguish the quality and authenticity of these things. It's even possible that we'll be targeted by bystanders, which could lead to disaster. Therefore, Haoming City opened this Yutian Paradise in the residences of aura refining cultivators. It specializes in purchasing medicinal pills, spiritual plants, and even cultivation methods from aura refining cultivators and reselling them to aura refining cultivators who need them. To be honest, this Yutian Paradise is a shop exclusively run by Haoming City. Junior. I don't go there often. The prices of the things there are quite high, and Junior often doesn't have enough spirit stones. Xiaohua originally wanted to ask more about the details of Yutian Paradise, but after hearing that this cultivator didn't go there often, he knew that even if he asked, it would only be hearsay. He might as well go there himself, so he didn't ask anymore. On the contrary, Xiaohua no longer asked about the cultivator. He was a little anxious and racked his brains to talk about some interesting things he heard. However, Xiaohua didn't find these useful. After all, Xiaohua was passing by Haoming City, and what that cultivator said wasn't what he wanted to know at all. By the way, do you know the rock border sect of the Lian State? Xiaohua's heart skipped a beat, and he asked, Are there any disciples of their sect in Haoming City? Well, the cultivator looked awkward and smiled apologetically. Senior, I seem to have heard of this cultivation sect, but I've never heard of any of their disciples traveling in Haoming City. And Xiaohua didn't comment. Senior, this is Yutian Paradise. The aura refining cultivators stopped in midair, pointed at a rather large Immortal's cave in front of them, and smiled apologetically. Junior won't accompany Senior inside. Please forgive me. Seeing that the Immortal's cave was guarded by Haoming City's city guards and that there were many cultivators going in and out, including both aura refining and foundation building cultivators, Xiaohua nodded and said, Thank you for your trouble. After saying that, he flew towards the Immortal's cave, ignoring the cultivator. Senior. That cultivator was a little anxious, but he didn't dare to speak loudly. Xiao Hua laughed and waved his hand, causing several spirit stones to fly towards the cultivator. Thank you, senior. The regret in the cultivator's eyes turned into surprise. He quickly took the spirit stones and bowed to express his gratitude. When Xiao Hua landed in front of Yutian Paradise, he saw the city guard quickly salute him. Several aura-refining cultivators going in and out also stopped and respectfully invited Xiao Hua to enter. Xiao Hua was different from the other foundation-building cultivators who held their heads high. He nodded slightly at those cultivators and city guards before quickly walking in. Oh, it's so big. You're really considerate. Xiao Hua entered the Immortal's cave and saw that the huge Immortal's cave was divided into several floors. There were many steps on the stone walls leading to different heights, and there were similar shops lined up at each height. Apart from the shops, there were no shop assistants to welcome customers. Everything was the same as the shops Xiao Hua had seen before. Senior, what are you looking for? A cultivator wearing a brand new robe stepped forward and asked respectfully. Junior is Haoming City's city guard. I'm here to guide senior and fellow Taoists in this Immortal's cave. Oh, I want to see aura-refining cultivation methods. Where are they? Xiao Hua knew that the things here had all been appraised by Haoming City's consecrators, so the possibility of him encountering rare things wasn't high. Therefore, he went straight to the point and asked. The city guard didn't find it strange and said with a smile, Senior, please go to the 4th floor. There are cultivation methods required by aura-refining cultivators there. I hope Senior will be satisfied. Do you need Junior to take you there? Is there really even cultivation methods for aura refining? Xiao Hua was slightly surprised. He naturally thought of his predicament back then when he didn't have any cultivation methods. Then he shook his head and said, No need, I will go there myself. Senior, please. The city guard smiled and pointed in the direction to the 4th floor. Xiao Hua was full of curiosity when he went up to the 4th floor. He randomly found a shop and went in. Senior, what kind of cultivation methods do you need? The person who greeted him was still the same city guard in the same robe. Xiao Hua didn't say anything. Instead, he looked up and sized up the shop. He saw that this shop was an oval-shaped space that was more than 100 feet in size. It was divided into dozens of partitions, and each partition had a city guard standing straight as if they were responsible for their own duties. Xiao Hua was standing inside the shop, facing a crescent-shaped table with several balls of different colors on it. The city guard who greeted him was standing in front of these balls. What kind of cultivation methods do you have here? Xiao Hua asked in return. He was indeed very curious about the cultivation methods he could buy here. Senior, please know. The cultivation methods in my Yutian paradise are roughly divided into 5 categories: metal, wood, water, fire, and earth. Senior, please tell Junior what attribute Senior's nephew is, so that Junior can recommend different cultivation methods for Senior. The city guard was still very respectful. Yes, my nephew is of the earth attribute. Xiao Hua replied. Chapter 2067. He, earth attribute cultivation methods are the most abundant. Senior, please. The city guard led Xiao Hua to a partition and clapped his hand. A brilliant light flashed on the table inside the partition, and a jade slip appeared. The city guard picked it up, handed it to Xiao Hua, and said, Senior, please take a look. Which one do you need? Xiao Hua took the jade slip and saw that it wasn't a cultivation method, but the names of various cultivation methods. There were actually thousands of them. Xiao Hua sucked in a breath of cold air. He had seen many aura-refining cultivation methods in the Imperial Thunder sect, but that was the Imperial Thunder sect, a famous cultivation sect in the state of Shi. Moreover, those aura-refining cultivation methods weren't passed on to outsiders and could only be cultivated by the disciples of the Imperial Thunder sect. This Haoming City actually put thousands of aura-refining cultivation methods for sale here, which really shocked Xiao Hua. But then, Xiao Hua's heart was moved again, and he asked with a smile, What's the highest level of cultivation method in here? Sure enough, as Xiao Hua expected, the city guard answered, At most, the 4th level of the aura-refining realm. Does Senior want to take a look? How many spirit stones do you need? Xiaohua asked calmly. The city guard rolled his eyes and said with a smile, "Since Senior came to buy, then you must have a heart. Junior won't be polite and will give Senior the most practical price." As he said that, he whispered to Xiaohua and told him a number that made Xiaohua dumbfounded. So high. Xiaohua pretended to exaggerate. "This number. I can bid for a damaged magic weapon." Hee. The city guard wasn't nervous at all and said with a smile, "Senior must be joking with Junior. How could a damaged magic weapon have such a price? Moreover, this is a cultivation method. As long as Senior's nephew has the aptitude, he can immediately step into the ranks of cultivators and be able to do whatever he wants in the Dawn Rain continent like Senior." And Xiaohua didn't express his opinion. Such a price for a cultivation method was reasonable. Just as the city guard said, this was a cultivation method, which was very rare. Since he could buy it with spirit stones, wouldn't it be much more convenient than looking for it like a headless fly? Are there any higher-level techniques? Xiaohua frowned. The city guard hesitated for a moment before he smiled apologetically and said, "I'll let you know, Senior. The Jade Field Grotto Heaven in Haoming City only has this kind of cultivation technique. As for higher-level cultivation techniques, you'll have to look for them elsewhere." Xiaohua nodded. Just as he was about to ask if there were any body refining and bone-tempering techniques, a voice came from behind him. "Fellow Taoist, may I ask, is this the place to collect cultivation techniques?" A timid voice sounded out, "I have here an unknown body refining cultivation method. I don't know how many spirit stones can be produced here. Or perhaps you can exchange it for some other qi refining technique?" Xiaohua was slightly taken aback. When he turned his head to look, he saw a short qi refining cultivator with a slightly pale face standing at the entrance of the shop. The cultivator was around the 4th layer of the qi refining realm. His eyes darted around and his expression was somewhat flustered, as if he was very shy. "Senior." The city guard accompanying Xiaohua whispered, but Xiaohua waved his hand, indicating that he shouldn't speak. The city guard had no choice but to accompany Xiaohua, not daring to speak. "Fellow Taoist." The city guard closest to the shop naturally walked over quickly and asked warmly, "May I know where fellow Taoist's cultivation technique is? We'll have to ask the consecrator to come over and appraise it before we can give you a corresponding price to exchange for other cultivation techniques." The cultivator bit his lip and asked, "It said that the Jade Field Grotto Heaven only has cultivation techniques up to the 4th layer of the qi refining realm. What I need is a cultivation technique that leads directly to the foundation building realm. May I know if the Jade Field Grotto Heaven has it?" "That depends on how good fellow Taoist's body refining technique is." The city guard smiled and said, "If it's rare, the consecrator will give a suggestion, and fellow Taoist's request will certainly be satisfied. Where is fellow Taoist's cultivation technique?" "I just came here to ask." A trace of redness appeared on the cultivator's face. "If Haoming City can satisfy my request, I can bring the cultivation technique over for appraisal. And then I'll have to ask fellow Taoist to bring the body refining technique over first." The city guard wasn't impatient and just dealt with the cultivator patiently. "All right." The cultivator nodded slightly and turned around to leave without hesitation. Xiaohua's eyes turned, and he nodded slightly at the city guard accompanying him before hastily chasing after the cultivator. Behind him, various expressions flashed through the eyes of the group of Haoming City's city guards. Some were regretful, some were resentful, and some were angry. However, sympathy was indeed sympathy, but none of them took any further action, even if it was something as trivial as raising their hands to remind the cultivator. Xiaohua left the shop and unexpectedly didn't see the cultivator. Xiaohua hastily released his divine sense and looked around. That guy actually slipped away so quickly? It seems that it wasn't a trap. Xiaohua narrowed his eyes and thought to himself pensively. He had just come to the Jade Field Grotto Heaven to look for a body refining technique, and an Qi refining cultivator came to sell a similar cultivation technique. This couldn't help but arouse his suspicion. However, he didn't regret not being able to see the Qi refining cultivator. After all, what he was looking for was a bone tempering technique, The body refining technique was just an excuse. It seems that I can't have high hopes for this Jade Field Grotto heaven. Xiaohua had seen this shop before and knew that Haoming City was behind it. For qi refining cultivators, the Jade Field Grotto heaven might be an excellent place, but for foundation building cultivators like him, it probably didn't have any real meaning. With that thought in mind, Xiaohua glanced at the shop and walked towards the 5th floor. Just as he reached the 5th floor, he saw the thin and weak cultivator from before still in a hurry, as if he had ulterior motives. Oh, so he came to the 5th floor to inquire. Xiaohua suddenly understood. Just now, his divine sense was only focused on looking down, but he didn't expect the cultivator to actually go to the 5th floor. Greetings, senior. The cultivator's divine sense swept past Xiaohua and he promptly stood to the side respectfully, bowing and saluting as he waited for Xiaohua to go first. And Xiaohua walked in front of the cultivator, stopped, and looked at the cultivator from head to toe. Under Xiaohua's gaze, the cultivator was abnormally embarrassed. His hands slightly shrunk into his Taoist robe, and when his eyes met Xiaohua's gaze, he felt as if he was being stabbed, and he hastily avoided it. Say, Senior. The cultivator timidly probed, Is there something you need, Senior? This old man has something to ask you. Xiaohua said amiably. Senior. The cultivator gathered his courage and said, Is there anything this junior can help you with? Oh, just now, this old man heard you mention a nameless body refining technique in the shop. Can you let this old man take a look? Xiaohua said with a smile, This old man is looking for a body refining technique for my nephew. If this technique is suitable, this old man won't be stingy with any spirit stones. A trace of vigilance immediately appeared on the cultivator's face. His eyes moved up and down, sizing up Xiaohua for a long time before he said in a low voice, How many spirit stones can Senior pay? Chapter 2068. Hehe, as long as it's a suitable cultivation technique, I can definitely satisfy you. I can even give you a suitable qi refinement cultivation technique. Xiaohua said with a smile. Seeing a trace of disappointment in the cultivator's eyes, Xiaohua smiled and untied the storage pouch at his waist. He handed it to the cultivator and said, Take a look. Are these spirit stones to your satisfaction? The cultivator took the storage pouch and scanned it with his divine sense. Joy and slight greed appeared in his eyes. The hand that was holding the storage pouch even shrank a few times. He said anxiously, Of course. I'm satisfied. That's good. Where's your cultivation technique? Let me take a look. Xiaohua nodded slightly. The cultivator smiled apologetically and said, I do have a body refining cultivation technique, but, Senior, do you think I can carry it with me in the storage pouch? Xiaohua frowned. He understood why the cultivator was just asking in the shop and didn't do anything. Forget it. Xiaohua flicked his sleeve and reached out to take the storage pouch. At this moment, the cultivator stretched out the storage pouch and reluctantly shrank it back. He smiled apologetically and said, Senior, I left the cultivation technique outside Haoming City. If you're willing, can you follow me? But at this point, the cultivator thought of something and his face turned a little pale. What? You actually dare to ask me to follow you outside Haoming City? Xiaohua looked at the cultivator with interest. Aren't you afraid I'll kill you? The cultivator was indeed afraid and handed the storage pouch over. However, just as Xiaohua took the storage pouch, the cultivator shrank his hand again. He gritted his teeth and said, Senior, can you wait for me here? I'll give you the cultivation technique Jade Slip right away. Xiaohua smiled as he looked at the cultivator and pointed at the storage bag. This old man can wait here, but you'll have to return the storage bag to this old man. Forget it. The cultivator gritted his teeth, put the storage pouch in front of his eyes, and said, I've always been very good at judging people. Senior has talked to me for so long, and you're not annoyed at all. Instead, you're very modest, so I trust you. You're definitely not the kind of senior who forgets righteousness for profit and bullies me at will. Xiaohua nodded slightly, retracted his hand, and said, You can take the storage pouch, but this old man still wants to see your body refinement technique. If it's suitable, you can take these spirit stones. If it's not suitable, this old man will still take them back. Yes, I understand. Junior will definitely satisfy Senior. That cultivator's face flushed red as he hurriedly said without thinking. Let's go, lead the way. Xiaohua said. Senior, please. The cultivator carefully put away the storage pouch, raised his hand, and led the way. The two of them left the Yutian cave and quickly left the mountain range. The cultivator stuck a flying talisman on his body and led the way in front. Xiaohua followed behind the cultivator at a moderate pace. Along the way, many cultivators saluted Xiaohua very respectfully with different expressions in their eyes. Obviously, they also had different guesses about the two of them. After leaving the mountain range of Haoming City, they arrived at the prosperous area surrounded by the mountain range. It was where all the cultivation sects' shops and strongholds were located in Haoming City. At the same time, there were also many ordinary inns. Xiaohua originally thought that the aura refining cultivator would stay in an ordinary inn and that the body refining jade slip would also be placed in the inn. Unexpectedly, the aura refining cultivator flew straight through the largest prosperous area and headed straight out of Haoming City. Huh! Xiaohua's expression remained unchanged, but there was a thoughtful look in his eyes. At this moment, the cultivator turned around and smiled apologetically. I just came to Haoming City a few days ago and missed the auction. Moreover, the spirit stones in my bag were really limited, so I couldn't bear to spend them on these inns. Therefore, I hid the jade slip and other important things outside the city. Then let's go. Xiaohua smiled. If you're not afraid, why should I be afraid? Yes, a hint of panic flashed in the cultivator's eyes. He seemed to be afraid of Xiaohua, so he lowered his head and didn't say anything else. After leaving Haoming City, the cultivator kept heading west, which was different from the direction Xiaohua had entered Haoming City. The surrounding scenery was also very different. At first, there were lush vegetation, but soon, the mountain terrain became dangerous. The vegetation also withered, and the dead trees began to point toward the sky. Senior, don't worry. I hid the storage bag in a mountain stream. We'll be there soon. The cultivator who had been silent finally spoke again. Since you're afraid that the cultivation method will be robbed, you should find a safe place. Wouldn't it be easier for someone to take it away if you put it here? Xiaohua said with a smile. I feel that you seem to have some bad intentions towards me. Alas, Senior, you don't know. I'm an itinerant cultivator. I'm often robbed by other cultivators, so I have to be careful. The cultivator smiled bitterly. According to my experience, it's much safer to put it here than to keep it on me. As they spoke, they had already crossed a foothill and saw a spacious place next to a gurgling stream. Senior, please wait a moment. The cultivator turned around and smiled shyly. He pointed at his feet and said, I hid the storage bag there. And go and get it. Xiaohua stopped in midair and said indifferently. The cultivator's figure slowly descended and approached the stream, but he wasn't in a hurry to land. Instead, he tilted his head slightly and peeked behind him from the corner of his eye. It didn't matter if the cultivator didn't look, but when he looked, he was stunned. There was no one at the place where Xiaohua was. The cultivator was slightly stunned and quickly turned around to look. I'm here. Xiaohua's voice sounded above the cultivator's head. Why are you looking for me instead of getting the storage bag? The cultivator's face showed a trace of redness, and there was even a trace of panic. Say, Senior. Xiaohua flicked his large sleeve, and a swift and fierce force was generated, covering the cultivator. Senior, how can you go back on your word? The cultivator sensed something was wrong and his figure unexpectedly flew up. He did his best to dodge while speaking in a flustered and exasperated manner. Xiaohua's figure followed the cultivator, neither too far nor too close. The force of the universe in the sleeve was also evenly distributed. He chuckled and said, I just said I was looking for a body-tempering cultivation method, and you delivered yourself to my door. Moreover, I'm a foundation establishment cultivator, and you actually let me follow you without worry. Don't you think I'll be suspicious? Marshal Uncle Yen, quickly save this brat. When the cultivator heard this, he was really anxious. Seeing that he couldn't dodge Xiao Hua's magic power, he hurriedly shouted for help. Xiao Hua wore a cold smile, and his divine sense swept over the foothill and the stream's surroundings. Xiao Hua, as expected, you're exceptionally cunning. You even saw through my arrangements. With a loud laugh, a light flashed on a rock beside the foothill, and Yen Yu's figure flashed out. However, since you've fallen into my trap, even if you've broken through to the middle stage of Foundation establishment, how can you escape my wrath? What? You don't want this disciple's life anymore? Xiao Hua's mouth had a smile that wasn't a smile. His hand tightened, and the cultivator was held in Xiao Hua's hand like a little chick. Marshal Uncle Yen, quickly save this brat. The cultivator struggled with all his might, and said anxiously, Senior, you promised that you absolutely wouldn't harm this brat's life. Marshal Uncle Yen? Xiao Hua asked indifferently. I've never seen fellow Taoist Yen before, and I don't know when I've offended fellow Taoist Yen. You actually set up a formation here to deal with me? Immediately, Xiao Hua's gaze swept over his surroundings again. You can actually see through these 4 forbidden formations? Yen Yu was somewhat astonished, but then he snorted coldly and said, Even if you can see through the formation, what can you do? Heaven's net has a long arm, but nothing escapes. You killed my Yen clan's direct descendant back then, and now you've fallen into my hands. Do you still expect us Foundation establishment cultivators to compare with the motley crew of the Heavenly Demon Sect? Yen clan? Heavenly Demon Sect? Xiao Hua's expression changed. At this time, Yen Yu waved his hand and took out a triangular formation flag. With a light wave, the figures of Xuanyan schools Xie Ming, Qian Han and Liang Yu appeared on the other 4 sides of Xiao Hua, beside the foothills and the stream. Oh, so it's fellow Taoist from Xuanyan school. Seeing Xie Ming and Qian Han, Xiao Hua came to a realization. You're Yen Li, the direct descendant of Xuanyan school, right? That's right, it's me. A trace of malevolence flashed across Yen Yu's face. You and that little girl from the Kai clan actually dared to scheme against my Yen clan's nephew. This old man's only blood relative actually died in your hands. If this old man doesn't kill you with his own hands, how can this old man's wrath be appeased? Avenging a descendant of your blood relative? Xiao Hua sneered. Looking at the cultivator in his hand, he asked, You delivered a disciple of Xuanyan school to this Xiao. Is this disciple's life not worth his life? Only your Yen clan's disciple's life is precious? Moreover, do you think this Xiao doesn't know what your goal is? Yen Yu laughed heartily. This disciple is a disciple of Xuanyan school. He needs this old man's help, so it's normal for this old man to make him do things. As for his life and death, it's in your hands. If you kill him, you'll be offending my Xuanyan school. This is different from killing my way. Different? Xiao Hua sneered at the aura-refining cultivator. If you want to blame someone, blame your master for not caring about your life and death. Since you dared to get involved with this Xiao, don't think you'll be able to return alive. Senior, please spare. The aura-refining cultivator was extremely terrified, hastily begging for mercy. Unfortunately, Xiao Hua's hand still slightly exerted force. With a light crack, the cultivator's neck tilted, and he was crushed to death by Xiao Hua. Following a wave of Xiao Hua's hand, the corpse fell to the ground. Xiao Hua laughed heartily. Old dog Yen, are you satisfied now? Can you legitimately kill me, a disciple of the Imperial Thunder Sect? Yen Yu's complexion slightly changed. He snorted coldly and said, That's right. You made a move to kill my Xuanyan school's aura-refining disciple, using the strong to bully the weak. I am a Foundation establishment cultivator of Xuanyan school. How can I not avenge my Xuanyan school's disciple? How can I not restore my Xuanyan school's face? In the future, even if this matter were to spread out, who would be able to say this old man's shortcomings? Chapter 2069. Yes, that's right. Xiao Hua smiled. But, do you think this matter can be spread? Yen Yu laughed. Yes, do you think this matter can be spread? As he spoke, Yen Yu's face revealed a sinister expression. He waved the formation flag in his hand, and a dozen faint spiritual energy fluctuations flashed, shooting towards Liang Yu and the other two. Then, 4 ripples of spiritual energy fluctuated with the 4 of them as the center, quickly controlling an area of several dozen feet around Xiaohua. A powerful force pressed down on Xiaohua from above. At the same time, the spiritual energy in Xiaohua's body was also suppressed, as if it was frozen. It actually showed signs of solidifying. Ouch! Xiaohua was shocked, his face slightly pale, and his figure fell down. Then Xiaohua seemed to be struggling, flying obliquely, wanting to fly in the direction of the stream. Haha, you still want to fly out of the 4 forbidden arrays? Yen Yu laughed sinisterly, waved the formation flag and said, "Senior brother Jie, come and help me." As Yen Yu waved the formation flag, Jie Ming's figure suddenly flew up, clapped his hand, and took out a small wooden dragon. Its shape was extremely similar to Jianghu. Go! Under the urging of Dan Hanming's magic power, that wooden dragon instantly transformed into a light that was the size of a small dragon. It slightly twisted in midair, and with a clear roar, it pounced toward Xiaohua. Xiaohua was in a difficult situation at this time. His figure was unstable, and at the same time, he clapped his hand, and the cloud-suppressing seal flew out crookedly, and the bronze brilliance on it slightly bloomed. However, that scattered light was obviously suppressed by the 4 forbidden arrays, and it wasn't as bright as before. Following Xiaohua's finger, the cloud-suppressing seal seemed to be moving against the water extremely slowly and smashed towards the wooden dragon. Pung! A clear sound rang out, and the wooden dragon hit the cloud-suppressing seal. The cloud-suppressing seal was slightly crooked and was actually blocked to the side. The wooden dragon only paused for a moment, and a lively brilliance overflowed, hovering above the cloud-suppressing seal, entangling it. Then, under Jie Ming's control, it dragged the cloud-suppressing seal to the side. The cloud-suppressing seal, on the other hand, hummed softly, as if it was trying its best to break free from the wooden dragon's shackles and forcefully flew in the direction where Qianhan was standing. What Imperial Thunder Sect's disciple who killed a cultivator of the same level as him? Seeing this situation, Yen Yu's heart calmed down, and he sneered. This old man spent an extremely large amount of spirit stones and spent an extremely great amount of effort to set up such a formation. Just the 4 of us Foundation Establishment cultivators are sufficient to kill this beast. Then he waved the formation flag and shouted, "Senior brother Qian, let's put in more effort and end the battle quickly. Don't create more trouble." Following the movement of Yen Yu's formation flag, the sealing power of the formation in front of Qianhan lessened. Qianhan clapped his hand and his magic tool, the jade flute, flew into the air. The jade flute was originally the size of a palm, but when it flew into the air, it became a few feet long. A series of wu sounds came from the jade flute. The sound waves surrounded Xiaohua's surroundings and rushed straight into his mind. Hiss! Xiaohua originally looked like he was trying his best to support himself. As a result, his eyebrows furrowed even more. His 2 hands involuntarily rose up, as if he wanted to cover his ears. Stupid to the extreme. Qianhan sneered. His 10 fingers continuously moved, as if they were really touching the jade flute. Different sounds rose and fell one after another, truly like invisible arrows piercing into Xiaohua's ears. At the same time, under Jie Ming's command, the wooden dragon dragged the cloud-suppressing seal down a few feet. It seemed to have lost Xiaohua's control. It seems this old man doesn't need to make a move, Liang Yu said with a smile. Senior brother Jie Ming seems to be exaggerating. Jie Ming said with a smile, that day, I saw that this guy's magic power wasn't bad. Although he's only at the peak of the Qi refining realm, there are some areas where he's not inferior to Foundation Establishment cultivators. Perhaps it's because junior brother Yan's 4 forbidden formations are powerful. Senior brothers, quickly kill him. Yen Yu's eyes flashed with a trace of pride, and he reminded, don't change things halfway. Even more, we can't let this guy escape. Okay, as junior brother Yen wishes. Jie Ming and Qianhan both smiled. Rubbing their hands together, their magic powers surged into the two magic tools. Not only did the wooden dragon radiate brilliance, wanting to swallow the cloud-suppressing seal into its stomach, but the jade flute once again expanded by 30%. That mournful sound was even more ear-piercing. Ha! Who would have thought that Xiaohua would not be as flustered as Yan Yu imagined? Instead, he let out a long laugh, and his previous embarrassment was completely swept away. Following Xiaohua's laughter, Xiaohua waved his two hands, and the two sleeves above his Taoist robe, along with his two hands, separately struck towards Jieming and Qianhan, who were already close to him. Moreover, from Xiaohua's body, an aura that had been suppressed for a long time suddenly erupted along with the surge of magic power. The power of the four forbidden formations was unexpectedly unable to suppress this aura, and a backlash force followed the formation and rushed towards the formation flag in Yan Yu's hand. Jieming and Qianhan were greatly alarmed. They intuitively felt a confinement force coming from all over their bodies. That confinement also contained a strong suction force. Not only were their bodies heavy and unable to move at will, even the true essence in their meridians was being controlled by that suction force. What kind of magic is this? While the two were shocked, they hastily activated the yellow talismans protecting their bodies, but they saw brilliance overflowing from their bodies. The protective magic did its utmost to resist Xiaohua's heaven and earth sleeve technique. Jieming and Qianhan were shocked, but as the formation master of the four forbidden formations, Yan Yu was even more shocked. He was very clear in his heart that Xiaohua's method of resisting the formation's confinement was more than a level higher than his. Otherwise, it was absolutely impossible for him to trigger the formation's backlash. This guy. Yan Yu's eyes widened, and his divine sense also locked onto Xiaohua. The magic power in his hands surged out even more, trying to control the formation flag with all his might. No, Xiaohua is definitely not an early-stage foundation establishment cultivator. The more he tried to control the formation flag, the more the powerful counterforce wanted to snatch the formation flag from his hands. This made Yan Yu even more shocked. Go, Yan Yu slapped his forehead, and the pressure of an early-stage foundation establishment cultivator pressed down like a mountain. Within the four forbidden formations, only his pressure could be used normally. Middle-stage foundation establishment? And at this time, Xiaohua's figure suddenly accelerated, charging towards Jieming like lightning. Xiaohua no longer concealed his cultivation base, and his mid-stage foundation establishment cultivation base was revealed. Moreover, when he saw Yan Yu release his pressure, he also released his own without hesitation. Seeing Xiaohua actually release his pressure within the four forbidden formations, Yan Yu cried out in surprise, but he was even more puzzled. Unless Xiaohua had the cultivation base of a golden core cultivator, how could he so easily break free from the formation's control? But everything that happened before his eyes made him even more puzzled. He saw Xiaohua's figure pouncing towards Jieming, and his flying speed didn't seem to be restricted by the formation. As Xiaohua waved his left hand, a thunder palm that was several feet long struck Jieming's body. Bursts of lightning flashed, and Jieming's defense was almost completely destroyed. And only at this time did Jieming react. He hastily formed a seal, and the same thunder palm also struck towards Xiaohua. Chapter 2070. But Xiaohua didn't seem to care about this. With a slight step, his figure flashed in midair, and an afterimage appeared. He actually circled to Jieming's side, and just as he left, Qianhan's great confinement technique also attacked. It just happened to be dodged by him. Seeing that Xiaohua actually dodged the great confinement technique out of thin air, Qianhan's eyes narrowed, and a bad feeling arose in his heart. Unfortunately, before he could think of anything else, a pair of pitch-black devil hammers also appeared out of thin air, and like shooting stars, they struck Jieming's shoulders. With a loud, pa sound, the light around Jieming's body dimmed, and all the protective light was broken. Immediately after, there was a kacha sound, and the second hammer followed closely, smashing Jieming's shoulders until they caved in. Jieming screamed miserably, and his figure fell from midair, dead. How is this possible? Qianhan almost didn't dare to believe his eyes. A middle-stage Foundation establishment cultivator was actually smashed to death by another middle-stage Foundation establishment cultivator using a devil weapon. This was a legend that only existed in the demon-resisting valley. However, without waiting for him to rub his eyes, the pitch-black devil hammers were actually thrown out by Xiaohua again, and in Qian Han's eyes, they became bigger and bigger, and were precisely aimed at himself. "Junior Marshal Brother Yen, save me." Qian Han suddenly felt a burst of coldness in his heart. Even Jieming couldn't dodge, how could he possibly escape? At this time, Yen Yu also seemed to have awakened from a dream, and hurriedly waved the already somewhat uncontrollable array flag. Liang Yu, who had long been eager to give it a try, or perhaps he was scared out of his wits, hastily clapped his hands, and a five-colored brilliance flashed, and a fierce qi was born from his hands. A magic weapon that looked like half a pair of scissors was raised in midair by Liang Yu. Qian Han felt a chill like cutting his face, and his heart unconsciously relaxed, knowing that Liang Yu had an extremely powerful magic weapon in his hands. But his heart relaxed, and he also saw the devil hammers flying in front of his eyes suddenly change direction and fly towards Liang Yu's magic weapon, but an even more dangerous feeling was born. Because Xiaohua's devil hammers went, but Xiaohua's figure flew several times faster than the devil hammers in front of him. Xiaohua's smiling face was so magnified, so clear, even Xiaohua's lightly waving hand was incomparably clear in Qian Han's eyes. True Samadhi fire? But seeing that within the pale green color of Xiaohua's hand was a wisp of crimson true Samadhi fire, Qian Han did not know whether to rejoice or grieve in his heart. He did not expect that Xiaohua would quickly wipe his own body and immediately chase after the devil hammer and attack Liang Yu. He could only naturally cry out in alarm. The seemingly weak true Samadhi fire suddenly burned fiercely, instantly igniting the restrictions around him. It was as if all the restrictions and spiritual qi of heaven and earth were helping the true Samadhi fire to burn. Ah! Qian Han screamed in agony as he followed in Jieming's footsteps. The true Samadhi fire seemed to have burned through his heart and lungs. His talismans and other items were like paper. Seeing Xiaohua advance instead of retreating and kill Jiemingjing and Qian Han with extreme ease, Yen Yu and Liang Yu were greatly shocked in their hearts when they saw that Xiaohua's previous fear and panic were just a cover-up. Especially Yen Yu, he was the master of the Four Gates restrictive spell formation. From the backlash of the formation flags, he already knew that Xiaohua's cultivation and magic power had long exceeded his expectations. The rumors he heard that Xiaohua killed 3 Foundation establishment cultivators were definitely not hearsay. Fortunately, he laid down the formation in advance, otherwise the 4 of them would have already died in Xiaohua's hands. And at this time, Liang Yu's flying scissors had already been released. The flying scissors were in the shape of a flood dragon, the head of the dragon coiled around the handle of the scissors, the body of the dragon as the scissors. The flying scissors were in the air, just like a flood dragon swinging its tail. Although Liang Yu was afraid, he was also in the formation, so it was difficult for him to sheath his blade. But Liang Yu braced himself and urged his magic power. The flying scissors shone brightly and chopped down toward Xiaohua's head. Hiss! Feeling the coldness of the flying scissors and the sharpness of the magic treasure flying scissors, how could Xiaohua not know the power of this magic treasure? Sucking in a breath of cold air, he pointed his finger at the cloud-suppressing seal. At this time, the cloud-suppressing seal also released a brilliant brilliance. Several clouds flew out from the cloud-suppressing seal and quickly blocked above Xiaohua's head. Swish, 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 several light sounds rang out in succession. The flying scissors cut through the clouds like a sickle harvesting wheat, easily cutting through the clouds. The cloud-suppressing seal hacked down. Withdraw. Seeing the power of the flying scissors, how could Xiaohua dare to let the cloud-suppressing seal touch it? With a wave of his hand, the cloud-suppressing seal quickly flew toward Xiaohua. Xiaohua's other hand brushed, and the devil hammer was taken out again to meet the flying scissors. With a sharp screeching sound, the flying scissors slashed across the devil hammer. Under Xiaohua's tremendous strength, the scissors were sent flying into the air. Xiaohua's eyes swept over the devil hammer, and he couldn't help but be shocked. A faint scar had actually appeared on the devil hammer. Good, what magic treasure is this? Xiaohua's eyes swept over the flying scissors that made a slight turn in the air and flew towards him again, and he thought to himself. In the distance, Yanyu was originally afraid and wanted to escape. But seeing how powerful Liang Yu's magic treasure was, he hesitated in his heart. With a "Pu," he spat out a mouthful of blood onto the array flag in his hand. The array flag that was not easy to control immediately stabilized, and a trace of blood-red light was emitted from the array flag. Fight! Yanyu waved the array flag again, as if the array flag was extremely heavy. And following the wave of the array flag, a great force appeared out of nowhere around Xiaohua, as if it wanted to crush Xiaohua. Not only that, after Yanyu strengthened the 4 forbidden formations, he slapped his hand, and a fist-sized pill furnace flew out from his storage pouch. Yanyu opened his mouth again, and a wisp of flame flew out from his mouth. The flame flashed and flew into the pill furnace. The pill furnace suddenly expanded, and a scarlet flame shot out from the pill furnace. Go! Yanyu's divine sense swept out, and he saw Liang Yu's flying scissors chopping towards Xiaohua again. He also pointed his finger at the pill furnace, and he chanted an incantation. A palm-sized fiery swallow flew out from the pill furnace and rushed towards Xiaohua's back. That fiery swallow's temperature was extremely high, and the surrounding air was burned to the point of collapse. From the looks of it, it was absolutely not inferior to the true Samadhi fire. Xiaohua saw that Yanyu and Liang Yu did not escape, and he was overjoyed in his heart. At the same time that he held the devil hammer in his left hand to block the flying scissors, he waved his right hand, and the yang leaf fan appeared. Gathering his magic power, he waved it, and a crimson dragon rushed towards Yanyu's fiery swallow. Ah! Seeing the crimson dragon rushing towards the fiery swallow, and easily swallowing the fiery swallow, Yanyu could not help but be stunned. If there was no formation, he might have thought that Xiaohua's magic treasure was powerful, but this was a formation. If Xiaohua did not have magic power that was several levels higher than his, it was impossible for him to have such an absolute advantage. Go! Yanyu changed his mind, and his previous obsession with revenge had now turned into nothingness. He waved his hand, wanting to take back the pill furnace, and at the same time, he quickly set up the formation flags, and one restriction after another struck toward Xiaohua. While he himself urged his flying technique, ignoring Liang Yu, and prepared to escape by himself. But at this moment, Yanyu felt a sudden pain in his mud pill palace, as if he had been pierced by a flying sword. Ah! Yanyu screamed in pain. The dermic powers in his body were withdrawn, and his body fell from midair. However, this piercing pain only lasted for an instant. When the pain subsided, Yanyu stabilized his body in midair. Before he could realize what was going on, Xiaohua's figure once again abruptly sped up. With lightning speed, he pounced in front of Yanyu. That massive devil hammer smashed towards Yanyu like a mountain. Feeling the incomparable suffocation of the demonic hammer smashing down, Yanyu was a little flustered. He waved the formation flags in his hand again, and the power of the formation rose sharply, wanting to block the demonic hammer's path. However, at the critical moment, another stabbing pain appeared in his divine sense. Yanyu's magic power stagnated, and he could not wave the formation flags. With a muffled sound, the demonic hammer smashed down, easily hitting Yanyu's forehead. The brilliance around Yanyu's body flickered, and then it was annihilated. Despair appeared in Yanyu's eyes from the stabbing pain. Before he could scream, his head was smashed into pieces, and his entire corpse fell from midair. With Yanyu's death, the 4 forbidden formations immediately lost their effectiveness. Liang Yu did not say anything, turned around, and flew in the direction of Haoming City, and even ignored the flying scissors that were flying towards Xiaohua. How could Xiaohua let Liang Yu go? His figure flew again, and his speed was several times faster than Liang Yu's. Without waiting for Liang Yu to fly more than 300 meters, Xiaohua had already caught up to him. Xiaohua rubbed his hands together, and the spiritual energy of heaven and earth around Liang Yu began to condense, and his magic power was also imprisoned. "Senior Xiao, please spare my life." Liang Yu urged his magic power several times, wanting to cast a spell, but Xiaohua's powerful earth condensation technique did not allow him to urge his true essence at all. Liang Yu immediately understood that Xiaohua's cultivation was definitely not something he could compare to, and he immediately opened his mouth to beg for mercy. In your next life, Xiaohua sneered. He waved the yang leaf fan in his hand again, and a fire dragon also flew out, howling as it drowned Liang Yu. The bone-piercing pain caused Liang Yu to have no choice but to scream. His figure fell from midair, and in just a dozen breaths of time, he was burned until there was not a trace of him left. Xiaohua snorted coldly. He was not in a hurry to take the storage pouch. Instead, he waved his hand, and the half-flying scissors floating in midair fell into his hand. At this time, the flying scissors had lost their brilliance, but the sharp blades still flashed with a cold light. My goodness, what kind of magic weapon is this? It's actually so sharp? Xiaohua praised inwardly. With a wave of his hand, Liang Yu's storage pouch flew over. But just as Xiaohua took the intact storage pouch in his hand and wanted to check it, a divine sense swept over from afar, and then a slightly dignified voice sounded, "Which fellow Taoist is rashly making a rash move here? Are you not taking the warning of my Haoming city seriously?" Xiaohua was shocked. His divine sense quickly swept over, and when he saw who it was, his expression changed several times. His hand was dissatisfied, and with a flick of his finger, a wisp of true samadhi fire flew out, landing on the corpses of Yanyu, Jieming, and the others that were not destroyed in time. Then, his face was as calm as water. With another wave of his hand, Yanyu and Jieming's storage pouches were also taken by him and slowly flew into Xiaohua's hand. Chapter 2071. Xiaohua coldly stood in the air. The 4 storage bags flew in front of him, and the magic tool that looked like half a pair of scissors was also covered by his sleeve. He very calmly looked in the direction of where his divine sense had come from. A moment later, a late-stage Foundation establishment cultivator dressed in armor flew over with several Foundation establishment and aura refining cultivators. This cultivator had clear facial features and looked rather Taoist. It was Haoming City's city guard captain, Yuqin. Xiaohua actually recognized one of the city guards he led. It was the aura refining cultivator he met outside Haoming City, Lu Cheng. At this time, an aura refining city guard could actually follow behind Yuqin. Obviously, the auspicious light stone played a big role. When Lu Cheng saw Xiaohua in front of him, his face also showed surprise. Compared to Lu Cheng's surprise, Yuchen's shock was even more obvious. However, although Yuchen's heart was overwhelmed with shock, his face was still calm. His figure only stopped when he was 10 feet away from Xiaohua. After a slight hesitation, he looked at the few balls of samadhi true fire that had already burned out and narrowed his eyes. It was unknown what he was thinking in his heart. When he looked at Xiaohua again, his eyes moved and swept over Yuqin and the others. He calmly took the storage pouches one by one and tied them to his waist in succession, as if the others weren't in front of him. However, when he pointed at the formation token next to Yenyu's disappeared corpse and slowly flew up, Yuqin said, "Fellow Taoist Xiao, don't you plan to give this old man an explanation?" Xiaohua laughed and looked at the formation token. He said, "Although Captain Yu came late, you also saw the end. Do you need me to explain?" Yuqin frowned slightly and said coldly, "This old man saw you kill other cultivators and didn't put the rules of my Haoming city in your eyes. That's why I asked. If it weren't for the fact that you're a disciple of the Imperial Thunder sect and have met this old man once, this old man would have already taken you down." As he spoke, the formation plate had already flown into Xiaohua's hand. Xiaohua looked at it, then put it into his storage bag. He then scanned it with his divine will. His gaze once again looked several dozen feet away. The 5 fingers on his right hand slightly curled and grabbed at several spots in the void. Several formation plates flew out from the cliff and the stream and landed in Xiaohua's hand. "Captain Yu, do you know what kind of array this is?" Xiaohua shook the array disc in his hand and asked with a smile. When Yuqin flew over, he had already sensed the traces of the 4-gate forbidden arrays, so he didn't dare to casually approach Xiaohua. At this moment, When he saw Xiao Hua openly take out the array discs, his expression changed slightly. Hearing Xiao Hua's question, he pondered for a moment and shook his head. This old man doesn't know how to set up arrays, so I don't know what kind of array this is. Xiao Hua's heart settled. With a wave of his hand, he put the disc array into his storage bag and said with a smile, "At this point, do you still need me to explain?" Of course, fellow Taoist Xiao has to explain. Yuchen laughed and clapped his hand. The pressure of a late foundation establishment stage was released and pressed down on Xiao Hua from above. Otherwise, how can this old man, however, before he could finish speaking, he saw Xiao Hua's face turn cold. He clapped his hand and released the pressure of a mid-foundation establishment stage without hesitation. At the same time, he waved his other hand and the cloud-suppressing seal flew out of space. It made a buzzing sound in the air and a bronze light shot out like a sharp sword, quickly flying above Yu Chen and the others. "How dare you?" Yu Chen didn't say anything. A mid-foundation establishment stage cultivator behind him angrily shouted and flew up, about to release his pressure. Wait! At this moment, out of everyone's expectations, when Yu Chen's pressure met Xiao Hua's, he immediately withdrew it. He shouted in a low voice and stopped the city guard's action. Yes. That city guard didn't dare to disobey and hurriedly bowed. However, his figure flew several feet and faced Xiao Hua, as if he wanted to surround him. Fellow Taoist Xiao, Yu Chen withdrew his pressure, narrowed his eyes, and said, "My Haoming city has always handled matters fairly. Although all cultivators are prohibited from killing each other within Haoming city's sphere of influence, the grudges between ordinary cultivators won't be forcibly stopped. Especially for fellow Taoist Xiao." In this old man's opinion, fellow Taoist Xiao must have been ganged up on by many people. Moreover, fellow Taoist Zhao's magic power is outstanding. Instead, he killed 4 people in a formation. My Haoming city absolutely won't hold fellow Taoist Xiao responsible for this kind of matter. Seeing that Yu Chen didn't ask clearly and pushed the cause of everything to the 4 cultivators he didn't see and cleared Xiao Hua's responsibility, Xiao Hua frowned slightly and said inwardly, "Could it be that this Yu Chen is doing this for the sake of the 3 elders of the Ardent Fire Mountain? Or is it because of my identity as a disciple of the Imperial Thunder Sect? But he didn't seem to be like this just now." However, since Yu Chen said so, Xiao Hua naturally pushed the boat with the current. Xiao Hua pointed his hand, and the cloud-suppressing seal flew back with a wung-wung sound. Xiao Hua caught it with his hand and nodded, saying, "Just as Captain Yu said, these 4 people don't know me at all. They actually set up an ambush here and wanted to take my life. I also know the rules of Haoming City, but my life was on the line, so I had no choice but to take action. If I have offended Haoming City in any way, please forgive me, Captain Yu." Hee, this old man knew it. Yu Chen laughed. The Imperial Thunder Sect is a famous sect. How could it go against my Haoming City? It must be someone else who schemed against fellow Taoist Xiao. This old man asked again and again just now, and this is the reason. Well, since Captain Yu has already asked clearly, can I leave now? Can this Xiao leave now? Xiao Hua didn't want to say another word to Yu Chen, so he went straight to the point. Of course, Yu Chen said with a smile, since fellow Taoist Xiao didn't violate the rules of my Haoming City, this old man has no right to keep fellow Taoist Xiao here. Okay, Xiao Hua nodded and waved his hand. A few true samadhi fire flew out and burned the corpses of Yen Yu and the others. Then he rose into the air and was about to fly in the direction of Haoming City. Fellow Taoist Xiao. At this time, Yu Chen spoke again. What? Captain Yu, is there anything else? Xiao Hua's figure froze, but no expression could be seen on his face. Nothing. Yu Chen said with a smile, if fellow Taoist Xiao needs anything, you can send a message to me at any time. I believe I can still help fellow Taoist Xiao in Haoming City. Xiao Hua saw that Yu Chen actually gave him a gentle attitude and was slightly stunned. He pondered for a while and cupped his hands, saying, I know. If there's anything, I'll definitely ask Captain Yu for help. Please, Yu Chen stretched out his hand and motioned for Xiao Hua to go first. Xiao Hua didn't stand on ceremony and turned and flew away. Chapter 2072. When Xiao Hua's figure disappeared, the middle stage Foundation establishment city guard opened his mouth and said, "Captain you, why did you let Xiao Hua go just like that?" He had killed 4 Foundation establishment cultivators in this place. If the masters of these 4 cultivators come, what will happen to our Haoming city? Yu Chen coldly glanced at the city guard and asked, "How do you know there were 4 Foundation establishment cultivators?" A trace of pride flashed in the city guard's eyes, and he said with a smile, "If there were 4 Qi refinement cultivators, how could Xiao Hua set up a formation to kill them? It must be because he couldn't defeat them, so he thought of using a formation. Captain, didn't you see him easily take out the formation plate and other things?" Yang Ming, Yu Chen sighed and said, "Your cultivation is good, and you have some brains, but do you know why you've always been under Shang Qinghe? That's because Shang Qinghe has the talent to flatter, not because of me." Yang Ming blurted out. Obviously, he already had resentment in his heart. If Shang Qinghe was here, he definitely wouldn't question this old man's decision. Yu Chen sneered and waved his hand. "Let's go. We'll return to the city." But Yang Ming glanced at several places that were burned by Xiao Hua and hesitated to speak. "None of you saw what happened today. If this old man sees it and divulges it, don't blame this old man for being impolite." Yu Chen said coldly, "This old man doesn't dare." Everyone was terrified and bowed. "Also, this place, no one is to check it out. After 10 days, come back and inspect it." Yu Chen's gaze swept across the valley, and he gave another order and flew up. Yu Chen and the others disappeared. After a long time, Xiao Hua's figure suddenly appeared on the foothills of a mountain. He looked in the direction of Haoming City and said to himself, "This Yu Chen, what's going on? Why is he so partial to this young master? What is he afraid of? This young master really doesn't understand." Immediately, Xiao Hua flew to the place where he killed Yen Yu and carefully looked for a long time. He didn't find any flaws, so he flew away again. In the distance, Yang Ming was carefully accompanying Yu Chen, quietly listening to Yu Chen's reprimand. "Although I didn't know that it was Xiao Hua who set the trap to kill the 4 Foundation establishment cultivators, Elder Yu," Yang Ming whispered, "it seems I can't tell that there are 4 Foundation establishment cultivators. Perhaps there were aura refining disciples as well? Or perhaps there is only 1 Foundation establishment disciple." Yu Chen glanced at Yang Ming and smiled. "How do you know there are 4 cultivators? Or perhaps 5 or 6 cultivators? That can't be. Xiao Hua only has 4 storage bags in his hands. It should be 4 cultivators." Yang Ming replied without hesitation. "Since you know that there are 4 storage bags, didn't you notice the quality of the 4 storage bags?" Yu Chen said with a smile. This. Yang Ming was dumbfounded. How could he notice so many details? It's easy to be a Foundation establishment middle stage cultivator, as long as you have enough cultivation. Yu Chen sighed and said, "But if you want to be a Haoming City's city guard captain, you have to have enough cultivation and not know how to observe details. You don't know how to observe people's expressions. You don't know how to... Alas, left and right, there are many things you need to know." Yu Chen waved his hand. "Although I can't carefully examine the quality of these 4 storage bags, I can see that they are definitely not aura refining cultivators. Therefore, the owners of these 4 storage bags must be Foundation establishment cultivators." "And I understand." Yang Ming's face showed a look of admiration. "Moreover, think about it. If Xiao Hua used a formation to set up an ambush and wanted to kill 4 Foundation establishment cultivators, do you think these 4 Foundation establishment cultivators would be Foundation establishment early stage?" Yu Chen said again, "Don't forget, Xiao Hua just came into contact with this old man's spiritual pressure. His spiritual pressure was beyond this old man's expectations. It was actually Foundation establishment middle stage." Foundation establishment middle stage? Yang Ming was shocked. This Xiao Hua actually knows how to conceal his cultivation? This old man only saw that his cultivation was Foundation establishment early stage. This should be a secret cultivation concealment technique passed down in the Imperial Thunder sect. Yu Chen's eyes flickered and he said, a foundation establishment middle stage used a formation to set up an ambush. Among the 4 cultivators with similar cultivation, 2 of them should be foundation establishment middle stage. Even 4 of them should be foundation establishment middle stage. With the strength of one person and the power of a formation, he actually killed 4 foundation establishment middle stage cultivators. Yang Ming was shocked. This Xiao Hua's strength, isn't it comparable to the edge of foundation establishment late stage? This old man doesn't know what kind of formation Xiao Hua set up, and I can't judge Xiao Hua's true strength. Yu Chen shook his head. However, if I say that he has the strength of foundation establishment late stage, I think I overestimated him. However, seeing that he removed the formation in front of this old man and wasn't afraid of this old man's reproach, this old man believes that he must have some kind of backup plan. The shock on Yang Ming's face was difficult to hide, and he once again said with admiration, "This old man will never forget Captain's teachings." This old man really didn't think so much. Hee, Yu Chen laughed. It's also a great advantage for you to concentrate on cultivation. As long as you improve your cultivation, these insignificant things are nothing. Yes, this old man knows. This old man will follow Captain's lead. Yang Ming saluted and smiled apologetically. Just based on Captain's approachability, I think Xiao Hua will be grateful to Captain's actions in his heart. If there is anything in the future, it will also be a small help. I hope so. Yu Chen nodded and said, although my Haoming city is powerful, it's nothing in the eyes of the Imperial Thunder Sect. As a disciple of the Imperial Thunder Sect, Xiao Hua naturally won't put this old man in his eyes. However, he has these things that can't be considered as blackmail in my eyes. Under this old man's blind friendship, he will definitely. Hearing Yu Chen say something that can't be considered as evidence, it didn't mean that Yu Chen had finished speaking. Yang Ming suddenly realized something and even stuttered a little as he said, Captain, you mean that the 4 people that Xiao Hua killed? Yu Chen's face changed and he shook his head and said, I didn't say anything. This Yu's divine sense also didn't see which sect the 4 people Xiao Hua killed were from. Yes, this old man understands. Yang Ming's face also tightened, and he said hurriedly. But immediately, Yang Ming's eyes turned again, and he whispered, Old Yu, we all believe that Xiao Hua set up a formation to kill the 4 cultivators. But what if it is as Xiao Hua said, the 4 cultivators set up a formation to ambush Xiao Hua? If Xiao Hua has such strength, he can still kill the 4 foundation establishment cultivators under the formation and not let any of the 4 cultivators escape. Yu Chen sneered. Then Xiao Hua is not Xiao Hua, he should be a golden core cultivator. Yes, this old man understands. Yang Ming smiled apologetically. If Xiao Hua has such strength, Captain's friendship is even more valuable. If he has the cultivation of a golden core cultivator, can we still escape from his hands? Yu Chen snorted coldly. I'm afraid that we will be the first to leave, right? However, speaking of this, Yu Chen's heart moved. He hesitated for a moment and sent a voice transmission to Yang Ming. No way? After listening to Yu Chen's voice transmission, Yang Ming's face showed horror. Let's go and take a look first. Yu Chen ordered. Just based on a few words just now, this old man can't really befriend Xiao Hua. If I can find something, it can also be useful to this old man. A disciple of the Imperial Thunder Sect, a cultivator who can easily kill the same level, no matter how much it costs, we should befriend him. Yes, this old man understands. Yang Ming cupped his hands and prepared to leave. Remember, be secretive, don't let Xiao Hua find out anything. Yu Chen said worriedly. This old man understands. Yang Ming nodded and said, this old man can still do this well. And, after Yang Ming flew away, Yu Chen put his hands behind his back, looked into the distance, and sighed in his heart, Xiao Hua, this old man is humble to befriend you, don't let this old man down. How could Xiao Hua think that killing Yen Yu would cause Yu Chen to befriend him? At this time, Xiao Hua was sitting cross-legged on the futon, holding the scissor-like magic weapon in his hand. He immersed his divine thought into a jade slip, and his face showed joy. Soaring dragon scissors. Xiao Hua laughed out loud, opened his eyes, and looked at the magic weapon with joy. This young master's dream execution is now breeding the primordial spirit, so it can't be used for the time being. This cloud-suppressing seal is indeed powerful, but I always feel that it's not powerful enough. Now that I have obtained such a powerful magic weapon, how can I not be happy? Then, Xiaohua's eyes flashed with a sharp color, and he sneered, Yanyu, Liangyu, and the others are just clowns. They say that they are avenging their nephew, but their goal is this young master's storage bag. Now, it's good that they went for wool and came back shorn. Instead, they gave this young master a magic weapon. Unfortunately, this young master's hands and feet are a little slow. It actually attracted Yu Qin, who used pressure to force out this young master's true cultivation. This secret method of stealing the sky and swapping the sun seems to be not perfect. But what's wrong with knowing it? Xiaohua thought proudly, it's just a late-stage foundation establishment cultivator. If it weren't for the captain of the city guards of Haoming City, this young master wouldn't have any scruples. As long as it has any rebellious thoughts, this young master will kill it all the same. Then, Xiaohua flicked his hand, and a spell seal hit the half of the soaring dragon scissors. The soaring dragon scissors suddenly flashed, and a golden light burst out like the sun after the clouds opened, illuminating the entire cave. Great, seeing the soaring dragon scissors in such a strange state, which was completely different from when Liangyu used it, Xiaohua's face showed joy. He cheered, and the spell seals in his hand continued to hit out. Along with Xiaohua's sacrificial refining, the flood dragon on the soaring dragon scissors gradually appeared until it was 1 foot long. Then, like a dragon soaring to the 9 heavens, it flew in the cave and circled around Xiaohua. After several hours, even with Xiaohua's cultivation, he was still somewhat dispirited. Xiaohua opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of blood on the soaring dragon scissors. A blood-like cold light flashed, and the originally closed eyes of the soaring flood dragons suddenly opened. That cold light actually shot out from the flood dragon's eyes. Moreover, the flood dragon's figure rapidly shrank and quickly returned to the original appearance of the soaring dragon scissors, floating in front of Xiaohua's eyes. Chapter 2073. The Tengjiao shears was still the original Tengjiao shears, but the eyes on the handle had already opened. Faintly, there was an uncontrollable sharpness that seemed to want to stand out from the Tengjiao shears. Xiaohua opened his mouth, and the Tengjiao shears flew into his mouth and was sent into his Buddhist heart. He secretly smiled and said, "Looks like this young master got another treasure." This Tengjiao shears was accidentally obtained by Liangyu, not a magic treasure taught by Sun Yan. Moreover, the Tengjiao shears is divided into yin and yang sides. Liangyu only got the incomplete yang side. Just with this half of the Tengjiao shears, this young master already feels like a tiger that has grown wings. It is even more powerful than the dream-killing flying sword. When I get the other half of the Tengjiao shears in the future, with the combination of yin and yang, I'm afraid that even a middle-stage gold core cultivator would be killed by this young master, right? Xiaolang, Xiaolang. At this moment, Xue Xue's exclamation came from outside. Xiaohua didn't have time to look at the other storage pouches. He swept it with his divine sense, and his face also showed panic. He responded, "Wife, don't worry." As Xiaohua's figure flew out, he saw that Xue Xue was already standing in front of the pill furnace, looking at the constantly fluctuating furnace with some panic. Boom! It seemed like the lid of the furnace was about to be lifted. The phantoms of 2 male and female lightning beasts flew out from the pill furnace, baring their fangs and brandishing their claws as they floated above the pill furnace. The 2 lightning beast phantoms were about 1 foot tall. As soon as they appeared, it was as if they had seen an irreconcilable enemy. They flapped their wings and pounced on each other. Quick! Xiaohua didn't have time to watch the 2 phantoms fight. He formed hand seals and hit the pill furnace one after another. The 3-legged vermilion bird phoenix pattern furnace was originally swaying left and right in the midst of the fight between the phantoms, and it was about to collapse. As Xiaohua's hand seals were inserted, it slowly stabilized. Seeing that the pill furnace was stable, Xiaohua flicked his hand, and several samadhi true fire flew out and fell into the pill furnace. Shwa! Several brilliant lights flew out from the cauldron and landed on the two Thunder Beast's phantoms. The Thunder Beast's phantoms suddenly expanded and became 2 feet tall. As the lightning beast's silhouette grew bigger, the heaven and earth spirit energy within the cave was absorbed by the silhouette, causing the sound of wind to fall into it. All right, at this moment, Xiaohua's expression was somewhat relaxed. He knew that right now was the time when the yin and yang of the male and female lightning beast's blood fused. It was the most crucial moment. Countless Shui family ancestors had failed to refine the Ling Lei Dan at this moment. Therefore, he didn't dare to be careless. He released his spiritual will and observed carefully. The two Thunder Beast phantoms were evenly matched, and neither could do anything to the other. After fighting for several breaths, they suddenly raised their heads at the same time, pounded their chests with their fists, and suddenly rushed towards each other. Right now! Joy appeared on Xiaohua's face. He stretched out his left arm and grabbed at the air with his 5 fingers. It was as if he was grabbing something from the pill furnace. As Xiaohua raised his arm, he spat out a mouthful of true essence, and a black and white net flew out from the pill furnace. One on the left and one on the right, it covered the male and female lightning beast phantoms. Combine, Xiaohua uttered an incantation, and his hands continuously formed seals. The two phantoms originally collided with each other, and under the adhesion of the black and white net, they gradually merged into one. Although this process only took a few breaths, the more the two phantoms merged, the greater the repulsive force between them. Separating and merging caused Xiaohua to consume a lot of magic power. Combine, Xiaohua shouted once again, and a wisp of faint scarlet-red spirit fire suddenly flew out. It circled around the illusory figure, and all of the repulsive force from before disappeared. With a loud bang, the entire alchemy furnace shook violently, and the two illusory figures combined together as they wished, and were absorbed into the alchemy furnace. Granny, Xiaohua's figure slightly swayed in midair. He seemed to be somewhat lacking in magic power. Looking at the 3-legged vermilion bird phoenix pattern furnace that was as quiet as a virgin, he couldn't help but groan. What kind of cultivator can refine this Ling Lei Dan so easily? This young master's alchemy technique is completely different from Xiaoyu continent, and my magic power is also close to gold core. Why can't I refine this thing easily? No wonder Shue's heart is tangled. How could her ancestor refine this Ling Lei Dan? Husband. Seeing Xiaohua flying in the air and the pill furnace returning to its calm state, Shui in the distance shouted in a low voice, "Is there a mistake?" Xiaohua turned his head and said with a slight smile, "In your husband's hands, how could there be the slightest mistake? Wife, don't worry. In another 10 days, this Ling Lei Dan will be successfully refined, and it will also be the day you build your foundation." Really? Shue's face showed surprise, and she couldn't help but offer her cherry lips considerately to Xiaohua. The two of them were affectionate for a moment, and Shui showed hesitation again and said in a low voice, "Husband, the cultivation method you taught me. I'm still a little unfamiliar with it. These meridians still haven't expanded. I think it's better not to take the Ling Lei Dan first. It won't be too late to take it when I feel confident, right?" Xiaohua thought for a moment and said with a smile, "It's all up to you. Your husband will accompany you. Whether you build your foundation in Haoming City today or in the Sea of Heaven tomorrow, your husband will stand guard for you." "Thank you, husband," Shui chuckled, her face full of happiness. At this moment, Xiaohua's brows slightly wrinkled again, and he swept his divine sense outside the abode. Why is this guy here? Xiaohua saw the person outside the abode, and he couldn't help but be surprised. Husband? Who is it? Could it be the fire Qilin again? Shui saw Xiaohua's unkind expression and asked in a low voice. "It's not the fire Qilin." Xiaohua shook his head and said, "It's Haoming City's city guard Captain Yu Qin." Shui was also puzzled, but she looked at Xiaohua and said with a smile, "I'm going to cultivate by myself. You can send him away yourself." After saying that, without waiting for Xiaohua to answer, she walked to a corner, sat cross-legged, and closed her eyes to comprehend. Xiaohua knew that Shui didn't want to ask more about him, so he smiled slightly, went out of the pill room, opened all the restrictions, and went outside the abode. On the side of the abode, Yuchen stood there casually without any city guards. Xiaohua opened the abode and said with a smile, "Captain Yu, I haven't seen you for a few days again. May I know what business you have in my abode today?" Yuchen released his divine sense. Seeing that there were no other cultivators around, he cupped his hands and said, "I didn't come to your abode for a special visit. I wonder if fellow Taoist Xiao can let me in for a chat?" Hearing that Yuchen actually said that he had nothing to do and wanted to enter the abode to talk, Xiaohua was slightly stunned. His mind turned quickly, guessing Yuchen's intention. I wonder if he saw through the matter of me killing Yenyu. Fellow Taoist Xiao, don't misunderstand. Seeing Xiaohua hesitate, how could Yuchen not know what Xiaohua was thinking? He hurriedly said, "I just saw fellow Taoist Zhao's profound magic power and wanted to make friends with you, so I came to talk to fellow Taoist Xiao." Chapter 2074. Profound magic power? You want to make friends with him? Xiaohua was even more stunned. Ever since he started cultivating, all the cultivators he met were either using him or forcing him to do things. How could he make friends with someone? Most of the people he had some friendship with were related to him. Someone unrelated to him like Yu Qin. This was the first time. However, Xiaohua still cupped his hands and smiled. My cultivation is shallow. I've never met a fellow Taoist like fellow Taoist Yu. Please forgive me. Hehe, it's fine. Yu Chen was comforted when he heard Xiaohua call him fellow Taoist Yu. Aren't you going to invite me in? Fellow Taoist Yu, please. Xiaohua stepped aside and invited Yu Chen into the cave. Yu Chen was only at the late stage of foundation establishment. Xiaohua had already killed late-stage foundation establishment cultivators when he was at the peak of qi refinement. He wasn't afraid of Yu Chen having any other thoughts. But where's fellow Taoist Shui? Yu Chen entered the cave and didn't release his divine sense. Fellow Taoist Yu, please sit. Xiaohua invited Yu Chen to sit and replied. Junior sister is in seclusion. She's looking for a chance to reach foundation establishment. She can't come out to meet you. Not bad, Yujin sighed. He watched Xiaohua take out some spirit fruits from his space. He casually picked one and ate while saying, "You disciples of large sects have an advantage. Your cultivation is guaranteed. You can't compare to us wild fox cultivators. Look, your junior sister is about to reach foundation establishment. As her senior brother, you're accompanying her from thousands of miles away. I'm really envious." Hehe, fellow Taoist Yu, please don't laugh at me. Xiaohua took out some spirit wine and smiled. I got this from somewhere else. I don't know where it came from. Fellow Taoist Yu, please have a taste. Oh? It's not from your Imperial Thunder sect? Yu Chen was stunned. However, he still picked up the wine cup and took a sip. I've drunk this spirit wine before. It seems to be Tianmen Mountain's Huang family's clear wine. Xiaohua thought for a moment, then said with a smile, this Xiao doesn't like spirit wine, but this thing seems to be. The two of them then chatted for a while. Yu Chen patted his storage bag and took out a jade slip. He handed it to Xiaohua and said, fellow Taoist Xiao, I ate your spirit fruit and drank your spirit wine. This is a little bit of this old man's sincerity. I hope fellow Taoist Xiao can accept it. But what is this? Xiaohua looked at the jade strip and asked somewhat strangely. Yu Chen smiled and said, won't fellow Taoist Xiao know if you take a look? When Xiaohua took the jade slip and immersed his divine sense into it, he couldn't help but reveal a look of surprise. Moreover, his eyes flashed with a trace of fierceness. Yu Chen didn't panic at all and said with a smile, this old man wants to be on good terms with fellow Taoist Xiao, so I naturally have to understand fellow Taoist Xiao. I just so happen to be the captain of Haoming City's city guards. Some things might be difficult for others, but it's as easy as flipping my palm for me. However, fellow Taoist Xiao, don't worry, this old man knows the severity of the matter. This old man didn't inquire about the rogue cultivator who sold the body refinement cultivation method. Moreover, according to this old man's knowledge, It's impossible for this old man to inquire about the situation. Xiaohua's eyes turned slightly, and he returned the jade slip to Yu Qin and said with a smile, "Fellow Taoist Yu's painstaking efforts, this Xiao appreciates. However, this isn't what this Xiao needs." Doesn't fellow Taoist Xiao need a body refinement cultivation method? Yu Qin took the jade slip and said, "This cultivation method is the best cultivation method in my Haoming City's jade field paradise." Fellow Taoist Yu, Xiaohua pondered for a moment and said with a smile, "Since fellow Taoist Yu has such intentions, then this Xiao won't hide it from fellow Taoist. This Xiao doesn't need a body refinement cultivation method, but a bone tempering cultivation method." Bone tempering? When Yu Qin heard this, his face revealed a disappointed expression. He put away the jade slip and said resentfully, "From what this old man has seen, I really haven't heard of any bone tempering cultivation method. This old man is somewhat ignorant and inexperienced." Bone tempering cultivation methods are rare in the first place. Xiaohua said with a smile, "This Xiao only has a divine ability that requires the assistance of this cultivation method. Otherwise, this Xiao absolutely wouldn't have thought of it. It's normal that fellow Taoist Yu doesn't know about it." "Okay," Yu Qin said with a smile, "since I know that fellow Taoist Xiao needs a bone tempering cultivation method, this you will help fellow Taoist Xiao look for it in Haoming City." Xiaohua was overjoyed when he heard this. He cupped his hands and said, "Thank you for your kindness, fellow Taoist Yu. In fact, there's no need to be restricted to Haoming City. As long as there's news of bone tempering cultivation methods in Xiaoyu continent, this Xiao will be endlessly grateful. This you understands?" Yu Qin nodded. Immediately, Xiaohua's heart moved again. He clapped his hands, took out the soaring dragon shears and asked, "Fellow Taoist Yu, have you seen this thing before?" Yu Qin didn't take it. He only scanned it with his divine sense and shook his head, saying, "This Yu hasn't seen it before. However, seeing that this magic treasure is incomplete, fellow Taoist Xiao means. Yes, fellow Taoist Yu, please pay attention. If there's news of this magic treasure, please inform this Xiao." Xiaohua said with a smile. "Okay, fellow Taoist Xiao, please rest assured. This you will help you pay attention." When Yu Qin saw that Xiaohua entrusted this matter to him without any hesitation, he was overjoyed. He knew that this trip wasn't in vain. He made friends with a cultivator with unlimited potential, so he immediately patted his chest and said with a smile, "Yes, fellow Taoist Yu," Xiaohua thought. He waved his hand, took out a few jade boxes, and placed them in front of Yu Qin. He said with a smile, "Fellow Taoist Yu came prepared," which made this Xiao a little nervous. This Xiao prepared these spiritual herbs for future use. "Today, I'll give them to fellow Taoist Yu as a gift for our first meeting." When Yu Qin saw that Xiaohua was so generous, he was overjoyed. He waved his hand and said, "Fellow Taoist Xiao, this Yu is happy to see you. How could I covet your Imperial Thunder Sect's spiritual herbs? Fellow Taoist's way of doing things makes this Yu a little uneasy. Fellow Taoist Xiao, please take these things back." This is this Xiao's goodwill. "Fellow Taoist Yu, don't be in a hurry to refuse." Xiaohua said with a smile, "Let's take a look first and see if it's beneficial to your cultivation. If it's not useful, then it won't be too late to refuse." Okay, Yu Qin didn't mind. He didn't think that a middle-stage foundation establishment cultivator could take out spiritual herbs that could move his heart. Moreover, Haoming City was a city of auctions. What kind of spiritual herbs hadn't he seen before? However, in order to not let Xiaohua lose face, Yu Qin still decided to take a look. Whether or not they were useful to him, he would take them back first. However, when Yu Qin opened a jade box and saw the spiritual herbs inside, he couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. His eyes emitted a trace of divine light. He looked around and said in a low voice, "Xiao. Fellow Taoist Xiao, these spiritual herbs. I'm afraid they're over 10,000 years old?" When he saw Xiaohua's smiling expression, he hurriedly opened the other jade boxes. After taking a look, the joy on his face became even stronger. He looked at Xiaohua with a complicated gaze. With a wave of his hand, he put away the jade boxes into his storage pouch. He sighed and said, I won't say anything else. Fellow Taoist Xiao is really considerate. These spiritual herbs are exactly what I need. If I were to be unreasonable, I would have come here in vain today. Great, Xiao Hua also clapped his hands and said with a smile, Fellow Taoist, you has such a magnanimous heart. I'm relieved. Yu Chen thought for a moment and said, Fellow Taoist Xiao, I'm still a bit uneasy after taking your spiritual herbs. The matter you mentioned just now is a bit tricky. I'm afraid it might not be effective in a short time. Do you have any other difficult matters? If I can help you, please don't hesitate to tell me. Hearing this, Xiao Hua's heart moved. He clapped his hands and took out a blank jade slip. He wrote some things on it and handed it to Yu Chen with a smile. I was just about to tell fellow Taoist you that these things are exactly what I need. Because I'm not familiar with the auction in Haoming City, I only participated in the auction for nascent soul cultivators and foundation establishment cultivators. I didn't come across these things. If it's convenient for fellow Taoist you, please help me gather them. I will be eternally grateful. Yu Chen took the jade slip, glanced at it, and said with a smile, so it's some materials for refining tools. They're not too rare. Fellow Taoist Xiao, you just have to wait for a day or two. Xiao Hua was secretly delighted, but there was nothing special on his face. He cupped his hands and said, Thank you for your trouble, fellow Taoist. I'll give the spirit stones to fellow Taoist right away. No need, no need. Yu Chen hurriedly waved his hand. These materials don't require many spirit stones. Just take it as a gift from me to fellow Taoist Xiao. After discussing the matter, Yu Chen said a few more words to Xiao Hua before leaving. After seeing Yu Chen off, Xiao Hua secretly said, No wonder cultivators pay attention to communication. Although I knew a thing or two before, I never got any benefits because of it. It turns out that a person's strength is limited. Everyone has their own sphere of influence. If everyone interacts with each other, many difficult things may become easy. When Yu Chen saw that I was able to kill 4 cultivators of the same level, he wanted to make friends with me. Perhaps it would be beneficial to his cultivation in the future. And I can rely on Yu Chen's power to get information that I can't find. It's really 2 benefits in one fell swoop. It seems that completely concealing my cultivation is not a good thing. Occasionally letting others see my true strength and getting the respect and recognition of others is also beneficial to my cultivation in the future. Immediately, Xiao Hua sat cross-legged again and took out the storage bags of Yanyu, Liangyu, and the others. His divine sense swept through them, and he couldn't help but be surprised. Another 3 days later, Yu Chen came to visit as promised and gave a medium-sized storage bag to Xiao Hua. Inside were the various materials that Xiao Hua needed to repair the cloud-suppressing seal. Xiao Hua thanked Yu Chen with a satisfied expression on his face. However, Yu Chen didn't get the slightest bit of information about the soaring dragon scissors and the bone-tempering technique. However, according to Yu Chen, he begged an elder who was on good terms with him in Haoming City to inquire about the information from the city lord, Taoist master Yao Hong. He was afraid that there would be some news after 10 days. This was naturally still beyond Xiao Hua's expectations. He didn't expect Yu Chen to actually spend so much capital and trouble Taoist master Yao Hong for his matter. Moreover, the 81-day time limit for refining the High Thunder Pill would expire in 10 days. He naturally wouldn't leave Haoming City in a hurry. It was normal for him to wait for 10 days, regardless of whether there was any news or not. After seeing Yu Chen off, Xiao Hua checked the materials used to refine the cloud-suppressing seal again, and looked at the refining technique to make sufficient preparations for refining the cloud-suppressing seal. Chapter 2075. Rise. Xiao Hua's 10 fingers opened slightly, and his spiritual power faintly penetrated into the 3-legged vermilion bird phoenix pattern furnace. A clear sound came from inside the furnace, and it was actually the sound of a thunder beast roaring towards the sky. Moreover, a rich fragrance spread throughout the entire alchemy room. Xue Xue stood far away in a corner of the alchemy room, and her eyes revealed endless admiration and pride. Looking at Xiao Hua, who was about to condense the pill, there was a trace of uneasiness behind that joyful expression. Right at this time, Xiaohua chuckled and looked back at Xue Xue. He formed a spell with both hands. The spell was very obscure, and the fluctuation of spiritual power was extremely strange. It was very different from the alchemy methods seen in the Xiaoyu continent. Fortunately, Xue Xue didn't know alchemy at all, and there was no other strange expression in her eyes except for admiration. However, what puzzled Xue Xue was that as Xiaohua formed a spell, the slightly vibrating alchemy furnace began to stabilize, and the hissing sound also became smaller. However, at the same time, the fragrance in the room also disappeared, as if it was restrained inside the alchemy furnace. This was very different from the alchemy techniques she had heard of. When Xiaohua waved his hand, a faint black and white brilliance flashed above the alchemy furnace, and Xiaohua's face was slightly surprised. This Ling Lei pill? Can't it be pulled out? Xiaohua muttered in a low voice and didn't dare to hesitate. He immediately waved his hand, and the flame under the alchemy furnace was immediately extinguished. He waved his hand, and a jade slip appeared in his hand, and he carefully read it. After a long time, Xiaohua put away the jade slip, but his brows didn't loosen. "Husband," Xue Xue saw this and asked in a low voice, "Is there a mistake?" Xiaohua smiled and said, "What mistake? It's just the process of refining the Ling Lei pill. It's a little different from what your husband knows. Your husband originally wanted to refine a few pills at once. Who knew that you could only refine one pill, which really makes your husband unhappy?" Hee, Xue Xue covered her mouth and laughed. "Husband is really greedy. This Ling Lei pill is a heaven-defying item. My Xue family's ancestors spent a lot of effort to refine one pill, and you want to refine a few pills at once? Is this a joke? This concubine will be satisfied with just one." Hee, Xiaohua's mouth curled into a sly smile. "My wife's problem has been solved, but what about our children? Husband still wants to leave some benefits for them." Hee, Xue Xue's face flushed red when she heard this. She giggled and said, "With an alchemist like you, whenever the children need it, you can just refine it." But within Xue Xue's charming smile, there was still a trace of gloom, far from what others could see. "Wife is right," Xiaohua exaggeratedly slaps his forehead. "If there is one child, this husband will refine it once. If there are 10 children, this husband will refine it 10 times. It really isn't a big deal." Hee, not shy at all. Xue Xue was abnormally shy, like a real young lady. After a short while, Xue Xue asked again, "That's right. Husband, is the soaring lightning pill done?" That's fine." Xiaohua nodded and said, "The pill is already done. Since you can't pull the pill, wait a moment, this husband will directly collect the pill." "Good," Xue Xue said with a faint smile. "After refining the soaring lightning pill, this concubine will follow husband to QC. There should be enough time to comprehend that wonderful technique along the way." Xiaohua heard this and thought of another matter. To go to QC, one must pass through Ink Cloud Black Forest. Xiaohua was very clear about the dangers of Ink Cloud Black Forest. If there wasn't any special passage, it would be very difficult for Xue Xue, who was a refiner, to pass through. At this moment, Xiaohua felt some movement outside the cave. He laughed in his heart. "Good, whoever wants to come can come. This is a good opportunity to ask fellow Taoist Yu if he has any shortcuts." However, when he released his divine sense and saw the person outside the cave, his face showed displeasure. The person outside was the Fire Qilin of Ardent Fire Mountain. "Wife, the Fire Qilin has come. I wonder what's the matter?" Xiaohua said in a low voice. Xue Xue nodded slightly and said, "Husband, you can just send him away. No matter what, husband will make the decision." "Okay," Xiaohua replied and went outside the cave. The Fire Qilin heard the noise and saw Xiaohua come out. Its gaze was still looking behind Xiaohua, but it was disappointed that Xue Xue wasn't behind Xiaohua. "Where is fellow Taoist Xue?" the Fire Qilin asked. "I will let fellow Taoist know," Xiaohua said neither arrogantly nor humbly. "My wife is in closed-door cultivation and can't see guests. I wonder if fellow Taoist has something to say?" Fellow Taoist Xiao, the fire Qilin asked sincerely. This fire knows that you and Shui Shui aren't dual cultivating, and this fire will be returning to Ardent Fire Mountain with grandfather today. This fire came today just to see fellow Taoist Shui. Fellow Taoist fire is leaving? Xiaohua was somewhat surprised and asked curiously, the auction just ended a few dozen days ago and the elders of Ardent Fire Mountain are returning? Yes, something strange happened in Ardent Fire Mountain. Grandfather has to hurry back. The fire Qilin was somewhat absent-minded. It didn't care about the advice of the 3 elders of Ardent Fire Mountain and casually said the reason, fellow Taoist Xiao, this fire just wants to see fellow Taoist Shui. It's fine even if we don't talk. Sorry, fellow Taoist fire, you should go back, Xiaohua said after pondering for a moment. But the fire Qilin was somewhat stubborn. It seemed as if it didn't understand the tactful words. It pushed Xiaohua and said, fellow Taoist Xiao, you are only Shui Shui's senior brother. Taking a step back, you can be considered a senior brother and sister with a closer relationship. Since you haven't dual cultivated this fire, however, when the fire Qilin spoke to this point, it stopped again because its hand was pushing Xiaohua's shoulder. Xiaohua did not retaliate. It only felt that Xiaohua was standing there like an iron wall, not moving in the slightest. Fellow Taoist Xiao, could it be that you want to force this fire to make a move? The fire Qilin sneered. Xiaohua narrowed his eyes. He didn't show any panic and said with a smile, if fellow Taoist fire wants to give me pointers, this Xiao will accompany you at any time. Good, the fire Qilin was furious. It waved its hand and the surrounding world spirit energy began to condense as if some powerful magical art was being cast. Wait, 2 voices sounded at the same time. They were the crisp voices of female cultivators. Fellow Taoist Shui, you came out? I knew you would definitely come out. The fire Qilin didn't pay attention to the female voice behind it. It was pleasantly surprised as it looked behind Xiaohua and hurriedly said. Shui Shui slowly walked out from behind Xiaohua. Her face was cold as she coldly walked to Xiaohua's side. She stretched out her hand and grabbed Xiaohua's arm. She said, Senior Fire, this junior has already made it clear in the cave of the Ardent Fire Mountain that this junior will be Xiaohua's wife in this life. Even if we can't dual cultivate, even if we can't live and die together, even if this junior becomes a ghost, this junior's body will belong to Xiaohua. Senior Fire should extinguish those delusions and properly cultivate. In the future, when you meet a female cultivator to your liking, you can then dual cultivate. Chapter 2076. Shui. Fellow Taoist Shui, Fire Qilin saw that Shui Shui seemed to be unable to complete his sentence. What other thoughts do I have? I naturally know what you're thinking. I just want to see fellow Taoist Shui before leaving Haoming City. My blazing fire mountain is thousands of miles away from the Imperial Thunder Sect, but this is nothing. I can be considered to have cultivated successfully now. If I wholeheartedly want to see fellow Taoist, this distance is nothing. But how can this distance compare to the distance in my heart? Even if I'm facing fellow Taoist Shui now, I know that the distance in my heart is greater than the entire Dawn Rain continent. I can't surpass this distance even if I cultivate for a lifetime. I just want to see fellow Taoist Shui once, just once. These words were said with deep feelings, and even Xiaohua was slightly moved. But Shui Shui didn't wait for Fire Qilin to finish speaking and asked indifferently, since Junior has already come out, it can be considered as meeting Senior. Senior, is there anything else? Nothing else. Fire Qilin was like a stunned goose as he answered. Well, since we've already met and Senior has nothing else, Junior will return. Shui Shui glanced at Fire Hibiscus behind Fire Qilin and said, Junior thanks Senior Hibiscus for taking care of me in the past. After speaking, she turned and left without waiting for Fire Hibiscus to speak. Fellow Taoist Xiao, Fire Hibiscus had an apologetic look on her face as she cupped her hands and said, I didn't plan to come and bid farewell to fellow Taoist, but I saw cousin coming over and was afraid that something had happened, so I followed. Since there's nothing else, I'll return with cousin. I hope to see fellow Taoist Xiao again in the future. Well, I even hope that fellow Taoist Xiao and Sister Shui can get married soon. Thank you for your auspicious word. Xiao Hua cupped his hands and said, I can't send fellow Taoist off, please forgive me. It's fine, fellow Taoist, please return. Fire Hibiscus glanced at Fire Qilin, who was in a daze, and said with a bitter smile. Then Xiao Hua turned and returned, sealing the cave abode. Fire Qilin actually stood there in a daze for the time it took to burn an incense before leaving quietly. Wife, why did you say those words just now? Truly inappropriate. Xiao Hua watched the Fire Qilin leave and grumbled in a low voice. Husband, if I don't say that, how can I make that Fire Qilin give up? Shui laughed. I'm just saying, why take it so seriously? I just don't feel good. Xiao Hua shook his head. Forget it, let's not talk about it anymore. The Ling Lei pill should be done, right? Shui urged. This concubine is looking forward to it. All right, Xiao Hua's expression was greatly refreshed when he heard Shui mention the Ling Lei pill. He said, I will keep the Ling Lei pill now. We should also prepare to leave Haoming City. In this Haoming City, it's really a little aggrieved. Under Shui's caress, Xiao Hua once again entered the alchemy room. At this time, the alchemy room was very quiet. Occasionally, there would be a slight sound coming from the alchemy furnace, like the chirping of birds or the swimming of fish. Listening to this sound was like the sound of nature. Moreover, the entire alchemy room was restored to its previous aura. The rich fragrance had completely disappeared. If one smelled it carefully, perhaps one could smell a trace of it when one got close to the alchemy furnace. Xiao Hua's divine sense swept over and knew that it was the best time to collect the pill. Therefore, he signaled Shui to stay away from the alchemy furnace. He took a deep breath and mobilized the true essence in his body. Spiritual power surged into his fingers, and he slowly launched a series of alchemy techniques. The techniques hit the alchemy furnace. At first, there was no movement. After a while, the alchemy furnace emitted a faint brilliance. When Xiao Hua waved his hand, the top of the three-legged vermilion bird and phoenix pattern furnace opened. With a soft sound, a dazzling brilliance flashed. A cloud like the shadow of a thunder beast was born from the alchemy furnace, and there was a gray flash in the cloud. Collect, Xiao Hua scolded softly. A real shadow flashed in his hand, and he launched a series of alchemy techniques on the cloud. However, the surrounding spiritual energy of heaven and earth was attracted by the techniques, and it actually formed small hurricanes around the cloud. These hurricanes rotated around the cloud layer and slowly absorbed the cloud. The shadow of the thunder beast also slowly shrunk and was absorbed by the gray flash. With a sound, there seemed to be some lightning in the void, and it lingered around the already formed Ling Lei pill and entered it. Great! Seeing that the lightning disappeared with the sound, and a thumb-sized Ling Lei pill rotated slightly in the air, Xiao Hua laughed loudly. He knew that the Ling Lei pill was finally completed. With a wave of his hand, the Ling Lei pill fell into his hand. It seems to be different from what was recorded in the jade slip. Xiao Hua's gaze swept across the gray Ling Lei pill. His divine sense was also blocked by the surface of the Ling Lei pill, and he couldn't help but be a little surprised. However, in his heart, he faintly felt that this Ling Lei pill formula was the real Ling Lei pill. Husband, seeing Xiao Hua holding the pill in his hand, Shui's face was hard to suppress the joy, and she whispered, Is the Ling Lei pill completed? Yes, Xiao Hua waved his hand, and the Ling Lei pill flew to Shui, but he said, however, it is different from what was recorded in the jade slip. Oh. Sure enough. Shui received the Ling Lei pill, and with her eyes and divine sense, she nodded and said, According to what was recorded in the jade slip, the Ling Lei pill has a strange fragrance, and there will be phantoms of lightning beasts in the surroundings, and there will even be miniature lightning beasts inside the pill. Xiao Hua smiled bitterly, touched his nose and said, Yes, and the Ling Lei pill should be half the size of a fist, far bigger than this. The color is also a little wrong. Shui continued, It should be black and white threads intertwining. Speaking up to hear, Shui realized something and quickly shut her mouth, put the Ling Lei pill into the jade bottle, and said with a smile, this is already not bad. Husband only looked at the jade slip and refined the Ling Lei pill without anyone's guidance. This wife doesn't know what to say. Xiaohua didn't care about Shue's explanation, and after thinking for a while, he said, this husband's pill refining method is different from what was recorded in the jade slip, or the pill refined is different. However, this husband believes that since it can be refined, this Ling Lei pill will definitely be useful. This wife doesn't doubt my husband. Shui pursed her lips and said with a smile, however, this wife will wait until later to take it. As you wish, Xiaohua nodded. We will prepare to leave Bright Dawn City. Don't wait a few more days. Shui shook her head and said, the disciples of the Ardent Fire Mountain might still be nearby, and if we encounter them, we won't be able to do anything, as my wife says. Xiaohua also didn't want to see the 3 elders of the Ardent Fire Mountain, so he nodded and agreed. On the 3rd day, Yuchen came, and just as he sat down, he smiled and said to Xiaohua, fellow Taoist Xiao, this old man has failed you. Xiaohua originally saw the smile on Yuchen's face, and thought that there was some whereabouts of the bone tempering technique, but Yuchen actually said this, and he couldn't help but feel surprised. However, Xiaohua smiled and said, no matter, this thing is rare, and this Xiao didn't plan to make it easy. If fellow Taoist you found it so quickly, this Xiao would be puzzled again. He fellow Taoist Xiao. Yuchen drank a mouthful of spiritual tea and said, this old man has failed you because this old man didn't get any accurate information from the city lord. Xiaohua laughed and clapped his hands, saying, so fellow Taoist you is joking with this Xiao. My city lord is a nascent soul cultivator, and his knowledge is 10,000 times better than ours. Although he doesn't know the whereabouts of the bone tempering technique, he has heard some rumors. Yuchen smiled proudly. According to him, this bone tempering technique was left behind from ancient times, and it has long disappeared from the Dawn Rain continent. It should be around 1,000 years ago. He heard a senior occasionally mention that there was a record in the ancient records of a certain sect that there was an ancient race who refined their bodies and tempered their bones on the overseas Sunset Island. Sunset Island? Xiaohua said happily, isn't that the exact location? This old man also had the same idea. Yuchen said with a smile, but the Kueha Sea is huge and there are very few overseas cultivators. There is no island named Sunset Island among the few known in Haoming City. Oh, this is not good, Xiaohua said with a frown. Yes, the waves in the Kueha Sea are stable, but the overseas area is full of monstrous waves, and the spiritual chi of heaven and earth is scarce. How can we find this so-called Sunset Island? Yuchen echoed, I think fellow Taoist Xiao should make other plans. After thinking for a moment, Xiaohua shook his head and said, forget it, I promised junior sister that I would accompany her to the Kueha Sea. Since I'm going, I'll go and find her. If I don't go, I will have an inner demon in my heart. Fellow Taoist Xiao wants to go to the Kueha Sea. Yuchen frowned and asked, fellow Taoist, don't forget that from Haoming City to the Kueha Sea, you have to pass through the Majiao Black Forest. After passing through the Majiao Black Forest, you have to cross the whole Meng country. Without a flying spiritual artifact, fellow Taoist Xiao and fellow Taoist Shui will encounter more than a little difficulty. Isn't this just for experience? Xiaohua said with a smile. If not, how can junior sister Shui build her foundation? Well, okay, Yuchen nodded and clapped his hands. He took out a jade slip and said, this is the map of the Kueha Sea that I found in the Sutra Pavilion in Haoming City. If fellow Taoist Xiao insists on going, then take it. Oh, thank you so much, fellow Taoist you. Xiaohua was even more surprised. He bowed and thanked Yuchen and reached out to take it. Xiaohua didn't look at it carefully. He scanned it with his spiritual sense and put it into his space. Then he asked, fellow Taoist you came at the right time. I want to ask if there is a secret path through the Majiao Black Forest in Haoming City. Yuchen was a little embarrassed. There are several secret paths in Haoming City. However, because of the Majiao Black Forest, these secret paths are all ineffective. We just found one recently, and it's not very stable. The danger inside. is also unpredictable. That's good. Xiao Hua clapped his hands and said, as long as there is a secret path, it will save me and junior sister Shui the trouble of going into the Mojiao Black Forest. As he spoke, he clapped his hands and took out a storage bag. This secret path must belong to Haoming City. These spirit stones are for me to buy information, so I won't make things too difficult for you, fellow Taoist you. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Qidian. Chapter 2077. Well. Yuchen looked at the storage bag and reached out to take it. He nodded and said, this secret path is indeed a recent source of income in our Haoming City. It's specially managed by the elders, but I can't take it. As for the spiritual stones, I'll take them. There's more. Xiao Hua waved his hand again, took out a jade bottle and handed it to Yuchen. This is to thank you for the sea map. Please accept it. Yuchen wanted to refuse, but thinking of the spiritual herbs last time, he hesitated a little and took it first. When he opened the jade bottle, he was a little moved. The elixir inside was exactly what he needed to condense elixirs. Alas, forget it. Yuchen smiled bitterly. I didn't want to exchange the sea map for your elixir, but this elixir. In my eyes, the sea map is 100 times more precious than this Ling Li pill. You don't have to be so polite. Xiao Hua waved his hand and smiled. Yuchen didn't refuse anymore. He took the Ling Li pill and said, fellow practitioner Xiao, there are many practitioners coming to our Haoming City to participate in the auction, including the practitioners of Meng country. Many of them came from the Amobao land. Now the secret path is ineffective. If they want to go back to Meng country, they have to take a long detour or use the secret path in our Haoming City. Therefore, there are many practitioners who want to pass through the secret path. Our Haoming City has also collected a lot of spiritual stones to arrange for these practitioners to leave. I'll try my best to arrange for you to leave first, but I'm afraid that it will take half a year to make the arrangement now. So long? Xiao Hua was stunned, but he thought for a moment and said with a smile, it doesn't matter. Now that I'm in your territory, do I have any scruples? But Yuchen nodded and got up. It's not too late. I'll go back and arrange it. Fellow practitioner Xiao, you can cultivate first. After seeing Yuchen off, Xiao Hua explained the matter to Shui and asked her to cultivate in the quiet room, while he himself went to the alchemy room. With a clap of his hand, he took out a storage pouch from the space and muttered to himself, since there's half a year of meditation time, it's exactly what I want. Yen Yu's storage pouch contains many medicinal pills and pill recipes used by Foundation establishment cultivators, and even some medicinal pills used by Golden Core cultivators. This young master will also take advantage of this time to take some medicinal pills and refine a few cauldrons of medicinal pills. Unfortunately, the Jade Slip has the pill formula for the Minghua pill, but it doesn't have the pill formula for the Elaine pill and the Hua Yuan pill. It's really too tight. Then, Xiaohua took out the clear flower pellet from his storage pouch and a drop of earth crystal Yao milk. He first poured it into his body, then put the clear flower pellet into his mouth. This was another rare opportunity for Xiaohua to cultivate. After the closed-door cultivation, Xiaohua carefully and stingily refined the earth crystal Yao milk, while taking some medicinal pills. After stabilizing his cultivation base at the middle stage of the Foundation establishment realm, he slowly pushed his cultivation base to a higher level. At the same time, in his spare time, Xiaohua was still refining pills. After a few more failures, he successfully refined the clear flower pellet used by the middle stage of Foundation establishment. Looking at the clear flower pellet that didn't have any medicinal fragrance, Xiaohua bitterly smiled. This clear flower pellet had tortured him enough in the past. It was like a flying sword hanging over his head, ready to take his life at any time. But it was also this clear flower pellet that sent him to the Imperial Thunder sect, which led to all the things that happened afterwards. Otherwise, he wouldn't know where he would be cultivating now. Perhaps he would be abandoned by the heavens, a member of the heavenly demon sect. But now, the clear flower pellet that caused his meridians to burst was an ordinary medicinal pill that he used for cultivation. Moreover, one or two of them wouldn't have much of an effect. Thinking of the endless possibilities, Xiaohua faintly felt that karma was tangled up in a disorderly manner, like a messy ball of thread. Unconsciously, he understood. He put the clear flower pellet into his mouth and his mind entered the space. The karma hand in the space faintly glowed. Xiaohua didn't dare to be negligent. He quickly attached his mind to the karma hand and carefully comprehended it. After an unknown period of time, Xiaohua felt some movement outside the space. He withdrew his mind from the karma hand and opened his eyes. He saw Shui looking at him with a pair of big eyes. She didn't disturb him at all. "Husband, you came out of seclusion?" Shui's eyes flashed as she asked in a low voice. And Xiaohua smiled and said, "How long was your husband in seclusion?" Shui glanced at the cauldron beside Xiaohua and said with a smile, "Husband's cultivation is really amazing. You have been in seclusion for more than a year. Even the medicinal pills in the cauldron were ruined and you didn't wake up." Xiaohua slapped his forehead. When he was comprehending the karma path, the clear flower pellet was still on the cauldron. Who knew that a year would pass in the blink of an eye? How could the clear flower pellet not be ruined? What a pity for these spiritual herbs. Xiaohua looked at the cauldron that was still warm and the cauldron that had already lost its medicinal fragrance and said with regret, "Yes, it's these message talismans that are disturbing my comprehension." Xiaohua released his divine sense and saw several crimson communication talismans outside the cauldron. Xiaohua understood that Yu Chen must have come to visit him and arranged for him to go to Meng country through Emojiao Black Forest. Seeing Xiaohua open the restriction and let the transmission talisman in, Shui wanted to say something but hesitated. She had seen Xiaohua's abnormal state when he was cultivating before, so she didn't dare to disturb his cultivation too much this time. However, Xiaohua's abnormal state this time was different from before. This time, Shui couldn't help but watch with concern. What kind of abnormality was this? A multicolored thread emerged from the back of Xiaohua's head. It circled around the alchemy room and immediately turned into countless threads. They passed through the alchemy furnace, passed through the alchemy liquid, passed through everything and scattered outside. Then, many more threads came back, passed through Xiaohua's body, and came out again. When Shui finished cultivating, she didn't see any movement from Xiaohua. When she came to the alchemy room, the multicolored threads had already turned into a huge cocoon of light, surrounding Xiaohua. How could this not shock Shui? Several transmission talismans were out of Xiaohua's expectations. In addition to Yu Chen's, there was also one from a disciple of the Imperial Thunder Sect's Taoist Master Miyu. There wasn't much content in it, only that Taoist Master Miyu was leaving Haoming City to return to the Imperial Thunder Sect. If there were disciples who had finished their experiential learning, they could follow Taoist Master Miyu back to the sect. Xiaohua didn't care about this message. After all, it was already half a year ago. However, this message was a rule of the Imperial Thunder Sect. Any ordinary disciple who received this transmission talisman would definitely be full of glory and eagerly go to Taoist Master Miyu to register to return to the sect, because this was an excellent opportunity to get close to a nascent soul cultivator. Thinking about how Xiaohua could casually give Bai Fengliang a foundation establishment pill, then wouldn't a nascent soul cultivator be able to casually give foundation establishment and golden core cultivators different benefits? This was also because Taoist Master Miyu saw Xiaohua appear in the auction for nascent soul cultivators, so she ordered her disciple to send this transmission talisman. Otherwise, how could an early foundation establishment disciple like Xiaohua receive this transmission talisman? Alas, this opportunity was also lost by Xiaohua. Chapter 2078. Yu Chen's messaging talisman was even simpler. He came several times, but Xiaohua didn't respond. He also understood that Xiaohua should be in seclusion, so he didn't disturb him. There were many cultivators going to Inkcloud Black Forest, so he could arrange things more freely if Xiaohua left later. Xiaohua looked at several messaging talismans, then sent out Yu Chen's messaging talisman, and then asked Shui, "Wife, how's your cultivation method? If it's successful, I'll accompany you to Haoming City to build your foundation. Otherwise, I have an appointment with Captain Yu, so we have to set off for QC. Shui didn't hesitate at all and said with a smile, I don't know why. I always have some lingering thoughts that this isn't the best time to build my foundation. Even the cultivation method you gave me has improved a little. I've already decided, so let's talk about it on the way. It's up to you. Xiaohua said with a smile. That cultivation method is beneficial to the meridians, so you'll have more confidence if you cultivate it for a few more years. Your foundation is different from mine, it's related to your life, so you have to be careful. Then, Xiaohua put away the pill furnace and other things, and Shui also put away the things she left in the cave. Not long after, Yuchen came to the cave. As soon as he saw Xiaohua, he looked up and down, but he couldn't find any clues. Xiaohua's cultivation was still in the early stage of foundation establishment. However, Yuchen still said with a smile, Congratulations, fellow Taoist Xiao, you've been in seclusion for another year. Your cultivation must have improved a lot. Xiaohua didn't think so and waved his hand, saying, No, I'm just a foundation establishment cultivator, how can I improve after a year of seclusion? I'm just relying on my leisure time here to stabilize the realm I just set foot in. Yuchen didn't ask any more and turned his head, saying, Then, fellow Taoist Xiao, are you going to continue your seclusion? Or are you going to Inkcloud Black Forest? If you're in seclusion, you have to give me the spirit stones for this cave first. The spirit stones you paid in advance for this cave are already not enough. Seeing Yuchen joking, Xiaohua laughed and said, Fortunately, fellow Taoist Yu is in Haoming City, or I would have been kicked out of the cave long ago. Yuchen also laughed. When Yuchen sat down, Xiaohua told him his plan. Yuchen nodded and said, Everything has been arranged by this old man. Tomorrow, there will be a group of cultivators passing through the Inkcloud Black Forest. 10 days later, there will be another group of cultivators. Whatever fellow Taoist Xiao thinks is possible. Xiaohua was slightly taken aback. Yuchen was even more surprised than Xiaohua. He said curiously, The Mo Zhao Black Forest is full of dangers, not to mention the Mo Sand and Mo Zhao. Even the rarely seen giant Mo Zhao and golden silk armor Ho can appear at any time. If it is not a nascent soul realm senior, no one can say that they can pass through it safely. Even if there is a secret path, most foundation establishment cultivators travel in groups. Xiaohua smiled bitterly. He scratched his head and said, Please forgive me, Taoist Yu. This is the first time I've come to the Inkcloud Black Forest. I didn't know it was so strange. If fellow Taoist Xiao is alone, this old man will naturally tell you the location of the secret path. Yuchen said with a smile, But fellow Taoist Xiao also has a delicate junior sister. In this old man's opinion, you should go with others. I will listen to fellow Taoist Yu's instructions. Xiaohua had always been a person who went with the flow. Hearing Yuchen's advice, he naturally agreed casually. But then, Xiaohua's heart moved and he asked again, Then, who are these two groups of cultivators? Yuchen said casually. This was not a secret. After all, these names were registered in Haoming City. Moreover, these names must be kept secret. When they set off, they must know each other's names. 10 days later, there will be disciples of Jinhua Mountain's Fu family passing through the Inkcloud Black Forest? Xiaohua did not care about the names of the first group of cultivators passing through the Inkcloud Black Forest, even if he seemed to have heard of the name of Blood Ray Island. Yes, it's the Jinhua Mountain's Fu family. Yuchen nodded and said, It seems to be an elder called Fu something. That's the 12th level of Qi refining. Fellow Taoist Xiao is on good terms with this Fu guy? How can we be on good terms? We just met a few times when our cultivation was low. Xiaohua said with a smile. He was not sure whether he knew this Fu or not. I see. Yuchen nodded and said, Then with fellow Taoist Xiao's cultivation, you can take care of them. Take care of them? Xiaohua was slightly stunned, but he immediately understood that Yuchen should be talking about the Inkcloud Black Forest. Can fellow Taoist Zhao's name be announced to them? Yuchen said with a smile. Can it not be announced? Xiaohua asked. Yes, that's right. Yuchen nodded and said, There are two cultivators traveling with Jinhua Mountain's Fu family who requested to hide their names. Oh? Hearing this, Xiaohua looked at Yu Chen's eyes and immediately understood. It turned out that the take care Yu Chen was talking about was more important than this. That's good. Junior sister and I will also not reveal our names. When the time comes, we can just wear camouflage clothes. Xiaohua nodded and said, Good. Yu Chen nodded and clapped his hand, taking out a jade slip and saying, Inside is the location of the gathering 10 days later. Fellow Taoist Xiao, keep it well. When the time comes, my Haoming City's disciples will be responsible for sending you to the edge of the ink cloud black forest. I won't be sending you off. I hope that the next time I see fellow Taoist Xiao will already have the same cultivation as me. Fellow Taoist Yu is joking. Xiaohua shook his head and said, It takes 30 years to go from early stage to mid-stage foundation establishment, and 60 years to go from mid-stage to late stage. How long has it been since I came back from Meng country? How can I catch up with fellow Taoist Yu? Yu Chen laughed. Without saying anything else, he drank a few cups of spirit tea and left. This senior Yu already knows that my husband's cultivation is at mid-stage foundation establishment? Shui was somewhat surprised. After Yu Chen left, she quietly asked. Yes, Xiaohua nodded slightly and said with a smile, If he didn't see my cultivation at mid-stage foundation establishment, how could he want to be on good terms with me? However, I really did get a lot from him. It seems that in the future, I'll have to make friends with cultivators of the same realm. 10 days later, somewhere in Haoming City, Xiaohua and Shui, dressed in camouflage, arrived in front of a dozen or so cultivators. The person in the lead was a city guard around the 11th layer of the aura refining realm. After Xiaohua handed the jade slip to the city guard looked at it and saluted very respectfully. Greetings, seniors. Xiaohua raised his hand and said, I'm not late, right? This group doesn't seem to be here yet? Senior, please no, the city guard said respectfully. The disciples of Mount Jinhua and the two seniors aren't here yet, but the others are. Senior, please wait a moment. When the time comes, I can immediately lead the seniors to Ink Cloud Black Forest. All right. Xiaohua nodded and turned his head to the side, ignoring the city guard. In the time it took to brew a cup of tea, about 5 or 6 aura refining cultivators quickly walked over. Xiaohua's eyes brightened. Sure enough, as Yu Chen said, the ones in the lead were the elders of Mount Jinhua. However, it wasn't just one, but two. Xiaohua just happened to know these two. One of the elders was Skyward Pavilion's Fu Feng. The other was guest elder Lu Yun. The current Lu Yun was quite different from when Xiaohua first met her. Her hair was completely white, and the wrinkles on her face had increased. However, the only thing that hadn't changed was her plain robe. Looking at Fu Feng again, he was a male cultivator after all. His hair and beard were still white, and he couldn't see any special changes. Of course, the two of them still had one thing that didn't change, which was their 12th layer aura refining cultivation. Alas, seeing that the two people who were previously high up didn't make any progress in their cultivation, Xiaohua inwardly sighed. I've been following the wind and the current smoothly. I haven't thought about it for a long time. How many cultivators are there on Dawn Rain Continent? And how many can step into Foundation Establishment? And how many can step into Core Formation? Cultivation is really too difficult. I came late. Please forgive me, fellow Taoist. Fu Feng walked at the very front. When he saw Haoming City's city guard, he promptly smiled apologetically. The city guard didn't have the respect he had when he saw Xiaohua, but he also didn't have any intention of looking down on him. He faintly smiled and said, Elder Fu, don't be anxious. The time hasn't come yet. There are still 2 more fellow Taoists. Fu Feng knew that Jinhua Mountain was nothing in the eyes of Haoming City. In any case, he was an elder and still needed to protect Jinhua Mountain's face. Thus, he cupped his hands and casually walked to Xiaohua's side. After waiting for several Jinhua Mountain disciples to stand still, Xiaohua smiled again. Wasn't the one standing behind Fu Feng precisely another old acquaintance of his? that skyward pavilion's Fu Shan. At this time, Fu Shan was already middle-aged, and his cultivation had also stepped into the 9th layer of aura refining. He could still be distinguished from his appearance. How interesting! Xiaohua inwardly laughed. I haven't seen a Jinhua Mountain disciple for a long time. I almost forgot about him. I didn't expect to meet him here all of a sudden. I wonder what a Jinhua Mountain disciple wants to do through Ink Cloud Black Forest. Thinking up to here, Xiaohua suddenly quivered and came to a realization. Damn it, I understand now. Didn't I see him before? It seems he wants to go to Meng through the transportation formation. I don't have time to look for him, but Jinhua Mountain will meet. Jinhua Mountain must have obtained information about him and went to look for him. Only this way can Jinhua Mountain send 2 elders. Thinking of the coincidence, Xiaohua naturally thought of the twin talisman jades and talisman puppets that were like flowers and moons, as well as the talisman puppets that lost their lives for love. Alas, I wonder how the coincidence is now? Does he know that his whereabouts have already been exposed? Xiaohua slightly wrinkled his brows. After all, he still had the talisman refining method on him and some cultivation methods that he had promised to temporarily keep. Xiaohua had long since had no use for these things, but he had no choice but to return the coincidence. And it's better to return the coincidence. Xiaohua very simply made a decision. At this time, the last 2 enchanting cultivators also came. These 2 cultivators took out the jade slips. After the city guard examined them, they quietly stood to the side and didn't say anything. Xiaohua's divine sense swept through the 2 cultivators' enchanting cloaks. He couldn't see their true faces, but he already knew that they were at least Foundation establishment. This was because Xiaohua currently possessed core formation strength. As long as the cultivation of qi condensation was below the 12th layer, the enchanting cloak couldn't obstruct his inspection. Chapter 2079. Strange, Xiaohua had Yu Chen's warning in advance, so he was very careful. When he saw the 2 cultivators, he couldn't help but think of Qiu Mingwei and Liao Xianlan. After all, he had refined talismans with Liao Xianlan on Jinhua Mountain and had seen the grudges between the Fu family and the Liao family. However, now that he thought about it, Qiu Mingwei had already made it clear that he wanted to stand up for Liao Xianlan, but because of Xiaohua, the Foundation establishment cultivators of the 3 sects came together and forced Xiaohua to flee. Now that so many years had passed, there should be an end to it. Liao Xianlan and Qiu Mingwei might not be thinking about the Fu family. Of course, the most important thing was that Liao Xianlan was only in the 5th layer of qi refining at that time. Xiaohua didn't think that she could surpass Shui and reach Foundation establishment in one fell swoop. It's better if it's not the Liao family of Gung Mountain. Xiaohua thought to himself. This way, I won't have to get involved in the grudges between the 2 families. This kind of scheming and deceit is everywhere in the Xiaoyu continent. I don't want to get involved in it. When the last 2 cultivators appeared, the city guard of Haoming City checked the jade slip and immediately led Xiaohua and the others out of the city. He escorted them all the way to the edge of the Ink Shadow Black Forest, where there was an extremely secretive secret path, before he turned around and left. This secret path was obviously different from the one Xiaohua had taken before. It was very close to the ground, and his divine sense was abnormally stable. Fellow Taoist Xiao, please? Fu Feng said very politely to Xiaohua. The distance between Haoming City and Ink Cloud Black Forest was not short, and it was enough for Xiaohua to get close to Fu Feng. Fu Feng knew that there was nothing in Jinhua Mountain that anyone coveted except for talismans, so he wasn't afraid of Xiaohua's probing. Although he was a little vigilant, he was still very polite to this cultivator. After all, it was good for him to not provoke or befriend a cultivator. Xiaohua glanced at the people around him. In addition to the 2 cultivators in camouflage, there were 3 cultivators in the early stage of Foundation establishment. The other 20 or so cultivators were around the 11th layer of qi refining. So he said to the 2 cultivators, "Fellow Taoist, how should I address you?" "My surname is Qiu." The man raised his voice and replied, "I understand what fellow Taoist Xiao means. However, I am here to travel with my beloved concubine and have no time to care about other matters. I bid my farewells." With that, the cultivator clasped his hands and grabbed the other cultivator. The two of them flew into the secret passage. Surname Chiu? Beloved concubine? Xiao Hua stared blankly. He'd already excluded Chiu Mingwei from the list, but this cultivator actually declared himself to be surnamed Chiu, which sounded very similar to Chiu Mingwei's surname. Could it really be Chiu Mingwei? Xiao Hua pondered for a moment, but then shook his head. This young master is overthinking things. This fur coat might be Chiu or it might be Chiu. It might not be Chiu Mingwei's fur coat. Moreover, it's impossible for Liao Xianlan to dual cultivate with Chiu Mingwei. After all, the difference in age and cultivation between the two is too great. Fortunately, the other three foundation-building cultivators also brought their own aura-refining disciples. They were actually willing to cooperate with Xiao Hua and pass through the secret passage together. Therefore, after some slight arrangements, everyone flew into Inkcloud Black Forest. This time, it was different from when Xiao Hua entered the forest. The purpose of this trip was only to pass through. Moreover, this secret passage had been inspected by Haoming City, and many cultivators had passed through it safely in the past few years. Even before entering Inkcloud Black Forest, the disciples of Haoming City had already explained many things to take note of. Therefore, more than a month later, at the other end of Inkcloud Black Forest, when Xiao Hua hurriedly flew out of Inkcloud Black Forest, the people of Mount Jinhua, the three foundation-building cultivators, and their disciples were already safely waiting outside. As soon as they saw Xiao Hua fly out, the three foundation-building cultivators flew up and bowed. "Senior, thank you for your help. If you weren't here today, we would all be buried in the mouth of Inkcloud." Xiao Hua, who was flying in the air, had a bitter smile on his face. It was not a big deal at first, but when they were about to reach the end of the secret path, an ink zhao suddenly appeared. Everyone knew how powerful this ink zhao was. Even golden core cultivators had to retreat, so how could a group of foundation establishment cultivators withstand it? One by one, they fled like monkeys scattering when the tree fell. Their escape was not a big deal, but Inkcloud, who seemed to be lost and even leisurely strolling, became interested and chased after them. Xiao Hua had no choice but to tell Xue Xue to stay behind and lead Inkcloud to another place. Finally, he used the earth escape technique to escape from the Black Forest. "It's okay," Xiao Hua said with a smile. "It's fate that we are going the same way. It's not a big deal for me to help you." Seeing Xiao Hua's indifferent demeanor, the three foundation-building cultivators were very embarrassed. They all smiled apologetically and said, "We didn't know your cultivation level, senior. Along the way we were too slow. Please forgive us." "Haha, the ignorant are not guilty." Xiao Hua waved his hand. "If it weren't for this ink cloud, I wouldn't have let you know my cultivation level." The three foundation-building cultivators looked at each other and smiled apologetically. "We are cultivators from Meng Kingdom. May I invite you to our sect for a chat?" "No need," Xiao Hua said with a smile. "I'm just traveling around. I don't want to get into trouble." However, after he finished speaking, he had a thought and asked, "I came to Meng Kingdom to ask you about something." "Please ask, senior." The three said respectfully. "There is a cultivation family in the south of Meng Kingdom. They might be good at refining. Do you know which family it is?" Xiao Hua thought for a moment and asked by accident. Senior asked the right person." One of the cultivators bowed and said, "I am Miao Yen from the Miao family in Meng Kingdom's Qi City. Qi City is in the south of Meng Kingdom, close to the QC. As far as I know, there are two famous refining families. One is the Fei family in Jiqing, and the other is the Qin family in Fan City. I wonder which family is senior looking for?" This. Xiao Hua was speechless. He didn't know whether the cultivator holding the gold leaf in the auction in Chiyu City could refine or not. However, if he asked the families in the south of Meng Kingdom, he wouldn't have any clues. Seeing that Xiao Hua was silent, Miao Yen said with a smile, "If senior is interested, junior can accompany senior to Jiqing and Fan City." My Qi city's Miao family is somewhat famous in the south of Meng Kingdom. It won't be difficult to find a cultivation family. If it wasn't for the matter of Mount Jinhua, Xiaohua naturally would have followed Miao Yan. However, seeing that the Jinhua mountain elder and Qiu Mingwei had also come to Meng Kingdom, he was afraid that they would all rush over. How could he give up? Therefore, Xiaohua said with a smile, "Forget it. Now that I have something to do, let's wait for the future." Alright. Miao Yan clapped his hands and took out his communication talisman. He respectfully handed it over and said, "This is Junior's communication talisman. If Senior comes to Qi City, please inform Junior. Junior will do his best." Good. Xiaohua accepted it with a smile. Miao Yan was also happy. Chapter 2080. Senior, this Junior is Shui Pei from Xian Lu sect. This is Junior's communication talisman. Another Foundation establishment cultivator quickly took it out and respectfully handed it over. "Oh, so you are a disciple of Xian Lu sect?" Xiaohua nodded and said, "This old man has seen Taoist Master Blue Feather, Taoist Li Qingxiu, and Taoist Shiming in Haoming City. Why didn't you go with them?" Hearing that Xiaohua had actually seen Taoist Master Blue Feather, Shui Pei's face became even more respectful. He smiled apologetically and said, "How could this Junior have a place in front of Grandmaster Blue Feather? Didn't this Junior just come back from the outside world? Even Marshal Uncle Li and Senior Brother Zhiming didn't see her." Then, he carefully asked, "May I know where Senior met Grandmaster Blue Feather?" "He, naturally at the auction." Xiaohua smiled and said, "If it was somewhere else, how could this old man have seen her?" This Junior is Jingjihao from Clear Leaf sect. This is Junior's communication talisman. When the last Foundation establishment cultivator saw that Shui Pei had finished asking, he quickly took the initiative to hand over his communication talisman. The last trace of scruples from before had long disappeared. Clear Leaf sect? This name is somewhat familiar. Where have I heard it before? Xiaohua was slightly stunned. However, he thought for a moment and was sure that he had only seen many cultivators from Meng country at the Feather Immortal Assembly. He really hadn't met them at other times. "Ok," Xiaohua took the 3 communication talismans and said with a smile, "If this old man has any matters, I will have to trouble you to wait." "We dare not." The 3 smiled and said, "For a senior like Senior who saved people without asking for the reason and led the trouble to others, we are willing to serve Senior." Then, the 3 of them took their disciples and flew away. Senior, when it was Jinhua Mountain's turn, Lu Yun, who had always been slightly cold, accompanied Fu Feng and flew in front of Xiaohua with a respectful expression. This Junior didn't know that Senior. Fu Feng stuttered. He thought that Xiaohua was just an early Foundation establishment cultivator. He didn't expect that he could actually kill Mo Zhao. This was the strength of a golden core cultivator. He was Senior Fu Feng's senior. Xiaohua waved his hand. Just when he was about to speak, Fu Shan, who had a flying charm stuck on his body, flew towards him again. He was so scared that he forgot that his flying charm was about to lose its effect. Moreover, he was flying towards the tunnel. He fell from the sky after flying for a few feet. If Xiaohua did not catch him in time and give him a flying charm, he would have fallen into Mo Zhao's mouth. Seeing Fu Shan fly away, Xiaohua looked at this guy with interest. Back then on Jinhua Mountain, Fu Shan had made things difficult for Xiaohua quite a bit. However, from the looks of it now, Fu Shan was just jealous of Xiaohua because of the talisman puppet. How could Xiaohua take it to heart? "Junior thanks Senior for saving my life." Fu Shan flew closer, but he didn't dare to get too close. He bowed and saluted with a grateful look. If they weren't in midair, he would have already kowtowed to thank him. And Xiaohua flicked his sleeves and said indifferently, "It's nothing, not worth mentioning." "May I know Senior's name? If you can bestow us with a name, we will definitely remember it." Fu Feng quickly asked. How could Xiaohua tell them his name? He smiled and said, "Just know that my surname is Xiao. Why do you need to know my name?" "Junior understands." Fu Feng replied with a lowered eyebrow. Lu Yun also felt a bit ashamed. She bowed and said, Junior is Jinhua Mountain's guest elder, Lu Yun. Junior thanks Senior for saving my life. Junior had misunderstood Senior before. I hope Senior can forgive me. Don't say any more, Xiaohua waved his hand. I was just casually helping you. It's really troublesome for all of you to go up and thank me one by one. Yes, Junior doesn't dare. Lu Yun thought that her previous coldness had angered Xiaohua. Her face showed a bit of panic as she hurriedly stood up. Fine, Xiaohua saw Lu Yun's appearance. He didn't know whether to explain or not. He could only frown and said, I don't like conventional etiquette. I don't have any other intentions. You all don't need to think too much. After saying that, his body floated up and said, I want to travel in Meng country. You all can go. Yes, Fu Feng, Lu Yun, Jinhua Mountain, and the others all bowed and said, Farewell, Senior. And Xiaohua just flew up a few feet and asked casually, Oh right, why did you all come so far with your qi refinement cultivation? Did something happen in Meng country? This. Fu Feng was a bit hesitant. Lu Yun smiled apologetically and said, the Jinhua Mountain have some private matters to deal with in Meng country. Junior and the others need to go to White Bamboo Mountain. Hee, I have no intention to inquire about your whereabouts. I also won't interfere with the matters of Jinhua Mountain's Fu family. Xiaohua was secretly happy. His purpose was obviously to inquire about the whereabouts of Fu Feng and the others. However, he still said, the two Miho cultivators who passed through the secret passage seem to be interested in you all. Their cultivation is above foundation establishment, so I have to remind you all. After saying that, Xiaohua pulled Shui and flew up, disappearing in a direction. Senior. Fu Feng heard and hurriedly raised his voice. Unfortunately, Xiaohua deliberately avoided him and didn't pay attention to him. Looking at Xiaohua's flying figure, Fu Feng didn't blame Lu Yun for revealing their purpose. He whispered, Elder Lu, according to Senior Zhao's words, our operation today was leaked. How could we, Jinhua Mountain's qi refinement cultivators, be coveted by two foundation establishment cultivators? Could it be that the cultivator surnamed Qiu is Qiu Mingwei? Qiu Mingwei? Lu Yun also realized and said in surprise, the middle foundation establishment cultivator who fought with our family head several decades ago in Jinhua Mountain? It's that Senior. Fu Feng's face was very gloomy. He was present that day and knew how powerful Qiu Mingwei was. If this Senior follows us, we will be in great danger this time. But that's not right. Lu Yun frowned and said, when Qiu Mingwei came to Jinhua Mountain several decades ago, he was already a middle foundation establishment cultivator, and his cultivation was already higher than our family head. If he has any ulterior motives, why would he follow us? Wouldn't he be able to kill us with a flip of his hand? We still need to be careful. Fu Feng still shook his head. In my opinion, we should. Elder Fu, are you going to return to Jinhua Mountain? Lu Yun was surprised. It's just a cultivator surnamed Qiu. Do we have to take the risk and go through the ink cloud black forest? Fu Feng's expression changed a few times. He looked at the sky in the distance and seemed to be thinking about something. After a while, he said, Elder Lu, you don't know. We came to Meng Kingdom this time not only to find Fu Zhu, Fu Puppet, and the corresponding information, but more importantly, Fu Feng didn't dare to neglect the rest of the words and only transmitted them to Lu Yun. Ah? There's such a thing? As a guest elder, Lu Yun obviously didn't know much. Only now did she understand the importance of this trip and couldn't help but cry out. That's right. If that cultivator is really Qiu Mingwei, then what he covets is the foundation of Jinhua Mountain? Fu Feng said while gnashing his teeth. Hee, I'm afraid it's not that complicated. Lu Yun thought for a while and said with a smile, as far as I know, Senior Qiu came to Jinhua Mountain for the Liao family of Gung Mountain and the girl named Liao Xianlan. If Senior Qiu still wants to find trouble with Jinhua Mountain, it must be Liao Xuanlan's idea. Senior Xiao said clearly that there are two foundation establishment cultivators. One is the partner of the other. The Liao Xianlan is here, how can she be a foundation establishment cultivator? Besides, if two foundation establishment cultivators come together, we can't resist any means. Even if the family head is here, it's useless. I don't think this person is Chiu Mingwei, Lu Yun said decisively. That's strange. Obviously, Lu Yun thought the same as Xiaohua. Fu Feng also realized it and scratched his head. I don't understand why Senior Xiao said that. Alas, if I knew, I would have told Senior Xiao more. Maybe we hid it from him and made him angry. Otherwise, we could have asked Senior Xiao to help us. Fu Feng said regretfully. Senior Xiao is a golden core cultivator. How can he care about our trivial matters? Lu Yun said disapprovingly. We should think about how to solve it ourselves. Elder Fu, don't say that the family head doesn't have a backup plan. Hee, that's natural. Fu Feng said with a smile. When the family head was traveling in Meng country, he had two good friends. They are also foundation establishment cultivators. Moreover, they are from Meng country's cultivation families. If we ask them to back us up, we should be able to scare away this foundation establishment cultivator who might be Senior Chiu. That's good, Lu Yun said while clapping her hands. Immediately, the people from Jinhua Mountain flew toward the south of Meng country. Damn it, I almost ruined it with just one sentence. Xiaohua sat cross-legged a few li away. He used his divine sense to check the area. After Fu Feng and the others flew away, he let out a sigh of relief and said, if they turned back to Jinhua Mountain, it would be hard for me to find a suitable one. Who knows if the white bamboo mountain they talked about is real or fake? Husband, you seem to be very interested in this Jinhua Mountain. Shue said with some confusion. Jinhua Mountain is considered a talisman-making family. However, they are currently in a decline. Compared to my Misty Mountain and Flying Phoenix Mountain, they are still lacking a lot. Hee, you don't know. Xiaohua said with a smile. Your husband has some stories in Jinhua Mountain. Eh? Is that so? Shue's eyes lit up. She said with a smile, I'm all ears. Good, Xiaohua nodded. Let's talk as we walk. Several months later, in the south of Meng country, in an endless grassland, two figures flew through the sky. They flew past the faint dark clouds and rushed toward the towering mountain in the distance. These two people were Xiaohua and Shue. Meng country was somewhat different from Shi country. There were more grasslands and mountain ranges. Relatively speaking, there were fewer lakes, rivers, and barren hills and rivers. Moreover, there were many small cities in Meng country. Some of them were occupied by secular people, some of them were occupied by cultivation families, and there were even more than 10 cities controlled by cultivation sects. Along the way, Xiaohua and Shue passed through mostly small cities. There were very few big cities. Of course, they were tailing the disciples of Jinhua Mountain. Presumably, they were trying to cover their tracks. Chapter 2081. In the past few months, Xiaohua had also made some inquiries. White Bamboo Mountain was located in the south of Meng country. It was not a famous mountain range, and there was only one cultivation family and a small sect around it. Although Fu Feng and the others had concealed their tracks, they had always been heading towards White Bamboo Mountain. They had even inquired about the movements of White Bamboo Mountain, so Xiaohua was certain that the disciples of Jinhua Mountain were going to White Bamboo Mountain. Today, after Fu Feng and the others came out of the transmission array, they rested in a small town and bought some gifts in the small town. Obviously, they were going to meet someone. Xiaohua and Shue did not want to wait for long, so they flew out first. They were already very close to White Bamboo Mountain, so Xiaohua could find the corresponding tracks himself. Husband, you said that the two foundation establishment cultivators might be disloyal to the disciples of Jinhua Mountain, but along the way, we have not seen any traces of them? We have already arrived at White Bamboo Mountain, why haven't they appeared? Shue stood in the air and asked very leisurely. Xiaohua was a little embarrassed and said with a smile, Hee, Yuchen did not say clearly, how would I know? Maybe the two foundation establishment cultivators asked too many questions, making Yuchen feel that there is a problem. Right, it has been several months, how is your practice of the cultivation method? When will you take the Ling Lei Dan? No hurry. Shue said with a charming smile. Could it be that my husband is in a hurry to dual cultivate with me? Oh no. Xiaohua touched his nose and said, even if I want to, I can't say it now. I have been practicing for several months, and I feel that this cultivation method is more and more powerful. Shue said with a serious expression. At this time, my meridians have already expanded a little. If I practice again, I think it can still expand. I want to lay a good foundation for qi refining meridians before foundation establishment. Xiaohua originally wanted to say, after foundation establishment, this dragon transformation art can still be practiced, and your meridians can also expand. But when the words came to his mouth, he stopped. After all, everyone's cultivation was different, and Shue wanted to be steady, so he said with a smile, it doesn't matter, your husband still has the same words, you can slowly cultivate, and your husband will accompany you until the day foundation establishment. My husband is the best. Shue smiled sweetly, and then she lowered her head and said, unfortunately, no one in this world is as fortunate as I am. Just think about that talisman puppet. For the sake of being suitable, she gave her body to another, yet she still couldn't obtain the love she desired. When I see someone suitable, I'll really ask him properly. Yes, it's more than that. Ever since Xiaohua told her about his experience in Jianghu Mountain, Shue had endless sympathy for the talisman puppet. She kept mentioning it, so how could Xiaohua refute her? He added, Songqing is Fu Zhu and Fu Ba's biological siblings. Since they've been intimate with each other, I'd like to see how Songqing will handle this. Are Fu Zhu and Fu Puppet really that beautiful? Shue rolled her eyes and asked, back then, did you also have a plan in mind? When you entered Mount Jinhua, did you not think that you would find such a beautiful dual cultivation partner and stay in Mount Jinhua for the rest of your life? Xiaohua smiled bitterly. This question didn't seem to be the first time he'd asked, right? Thus, Xiaohua rubbed his nose and replied righteously, all right, I'll let my wife know. Back then, your husband didn't think too much. I only thought about cultivation. If you want to make a name for yourself, any kind of beauty is nothing in front of you. Shue laughed and said, I don't believe you. You said it yourself, Songqing is extremely handsome. Fu Zhu and Fu Ba simply don't like you. My wife. Xiaohua said awkwardly, it's fine as long as you know this. Why bring it out to attack your husband? Isn't your husband just a little less handsome than Songqing? Besides, my wife already knows, so why ask me every time? Hee, I just want to see if your answer is the same every time. Shue covered her mouth and laughed. But at this time, Xiaohua didn't respond as expected. Instead, he frowned and lowered his head to look at the ground. Husband? Shue asked curiously. At the same time, she also looked down. However, under their feet was a withered and yellow grassland. Mottled yellow soil could be seen from the withered grass. It was as ugly as a child's head. Shue was very puzzled. She also swept out her divine sense. However, other than withered grass and yellow soil, there was still nothing special. Husband? Shue raised her voice and asked, what's there to see here? Could it be that my husband found the traces of those two foundation establishment cultivators? No, Xiaohua's eyes flashed with a strange light. He shook his head and said, ever since Mo Zhao in the Black Forest, I haven't seen those two people. Then why did you? Shue asked. Oh, my wife. Xiaohua pointed at the withered grassland and asked, this grassland is so barren. Don't you think it's very strange? Ah? Shue was stunned. She looked again and shook her head. Husband, I don't feel anything strange. It's already midsummer. It's the time when the rain is moistened. This grassland should be lush with water and grass, cattle and sheep everywhere. However, look, it's all barren. Where did the cattle and sheep come from? Then where did the shepherds go? Xiaohua patiently explained. Ah? Shue was even more puzzled. She muttered, this? I don't know. Moreover, where the shepherds went, does it have anything to do with us? Yes, The grassland was barren and the cattle and sheep were missing. What did it have to do with Xue Xue? What did it have to do with cultivation? How could Xue Xue know? Come with me. Xiaohua knew what Xue Xue was thinking. He swept his divine sense and flew towards another direction. Although Xue Xue was puzzled, she still followed. They flew for dozens of miles and arrived at a hilly area. It was a mountainous area. On the hillside, there were layers of cultivated fields. They were like stairs that extended from the top of the mountain to the foot of the mountain. However, at this time, in the cultivated fields, there were cracks from the top of the mountain to the foot of the mountain. The cracks were like dry human skin. Where was the appearance of a cultivated field? In the barren cultivated fields, not to mention the crops, even the grasses were in 2s and 3s. Seeing the deep compassion in Xiaohua's eyes, Xue Xue was very puzzled. Just as she was about to speak, Xiaohua raised his head again. He sped up and landed halfway on a hill. On this hill, there was a solitary straw shed. Beside the straw shed, there was a huge rock. Beside the rock, there was a small well. Xue Xue didn't know what Xiaohua was doing. She silently fell behind Xiaohua and followed him to the straw shed. The straw shed was very simple and crude. There were only a few crooked branches and some scattered withered grass. Turning around the straw shed, they saw a piece of cultivated field that was several zhang in size. Inside, there were a dozen or so tender seedlings standing there listlessly. However, Xiaohua's gaze swept across the field and landed on the straw shed. He couldn't help but feel a piercing pain in his heart. Chapter 2082. Ah! Xue Xue casually glanced around and was immediately shocked. She covered her mouth with her hand and looked inside with her eyes wide open in disbelief. There was only a shabby straw mat in the straw hut. On the mat, there was a 2-chi tall baby boy lying on his back. Well, rather than calling it a baby boy, it was better to call it a skeleton. Because the child's head was big, his eyes were sunken, there was no flesh on his face, and his skin was tightly stuck to his bones. He didn't wear any clothes, his ribs were bulging, his little arms and legs were curled up, and his bones were exposed. If it wasn't for his chest rising and falling, Xue Xue would have thought that this baby was dead just by looking at him with the naked eye. Pitiful, Xiaohua sighed and continued to walk forward. Beside the straw hut was a ridge in the fields. An old man in ragged clothes was squatting there weakly, looking at the dozen or so seedlings in front of him with lifeless eyes. Xiaohua and Xue Xue's voices had already alarmed the old man. However, the old man indifferently raised his head and glanced at them. His turbid eyes were cold, and he lowered his head again. Sir. Xiaohua walked forward and bowed. Sir. Xue Xue once again saw that Xiaohua was different. She understood that although Xiaohua's face was very light, he might not be much younger than the old man. There was no need for him to be so respectful. Little brother, what's the matter? The old man seemed to be unwilling to pay attention to Xiaohua. He didn't even look at Xiaohua and said in a low voice. That voice seemed to be in his throat, as if he was afraid of wasting energy. Sir. Xiaohua's words were stuck in his mouth. He didn't know where to start. After thinking for a moment, Xiaohua turned to Xue Xue and said, Wife, do you have anything to eat in your storage bag? Yes, Xue Xue hurriedly said. She clapped her hands and took out a jade bottle and handed it to Xiaohua. What is this? Xiaohua frowned. Fasting pill, Xue Xue hurriedly said. Sigh, Xiaohua shook his head and said, This thing can only be used for fasting, it can't support the consumption of ordinary people. Oh, Xue Xue's face slightly reddened. She understood Xiaohua's meaning and said in a low voice, I haven't eaten for a long time, how can I have such things? Xue Xue's eyes lit up as she reminded him, My husband, although we don't have any food, spirit fruits, should be edible. That's right. Xiaohua slapped his forehead and waved his hand, taking out several different spirit fruits. After tasting them one by one, his mouth actually gradually became bitter. The spiritual light in his space was abundant, and all the spiritual fruits were full of spiritual qi. This was extremely good for cultivators, but how could these ordinary people eat them? Not to mention the old man and the baby whose bodies were on the verge of collapse. What should we do? Xiao Hua scratched his head. He was clear in his heart that the old man's situation was better, but the baby was in danger. Even if he could fly back to the city to find food, the baby wouldn't be able to wait for him to return. Why don't we take the baby and leave? Xiao Hua's heart was filled with compassion. My husband, Xue Xue, clapped her hands and took out several dried spirit jujubes. She said in a low voice, "This is what I took out to satisfy my cravings in Xuanlei Palace in the early years. Do you think it's okay?" Great. Xiao Hua reached out to take the spirit jujubes and kissed Xue Xue's face. He said with a smile, "Today, 2 lives were saved by you." Seeing Xue Xue's beaming face, Xiao Hua took a bite of the spirit jujube and handed it to the old man. He said with a smile, "Old man, you can eat this spirit jujube first. This little one can slowly ask you." The old man's turbid eyes flashed with a trace of luster. He waved his dark, thin and dirty hand and grabbed the spirit jujubes. He opened his mouth and was about to throw them into his mouth. "Old man," Xiao Hua hurriedly blocked the old man's hand, as if he didn't dislike the filth on his hand. He said in a low voice, "You can only eat this thing bite by bite, and you can only eat half of it." The old man glanced at Xiao Hua. He hesitated for a moment, then picked one out with his finger and gently bit off a piece of meat with his teeth. Xiao Hua carefully observed the old man, fearing that there would be some problem with this spirit jujube. But after the old man chewed for a while, he actually couldn't swallow it and struggled to get up from the ground. The old man didn't have much strength now. How could he stand steadily? He staggered and was about to fall again. Xiao Hua hurriedly supported him and asked, "Old man, where are you going?" The old man didn't answer and rushed towards the straw hut. Xiao Hua secretly sighed. He supported the old man with one hand and followed him into the straw hut. Sure enough, the old man hurriedly arrived in front of the infant boy and knelt on the ground with a putong sound. He bent down and used his mouth to pass the jujube meat that he had just chewed into the infant's mouth. As soon as the fragrant jujube meat entered the infant's mouth, the infant greedily chewed. After chewing a few times, the infant's slightly trembling lips stopped and a trace of bitterness appeared on his face. But immediately he hurriedly chewed again. Obviously, the infant used his only baby teeth to bite his lips. Slow down. Grandpa still has more here," the old man said in a low voice. He hurriedly took another bite of the jujube meat and wanted to feed it to the infant again. Xiao Hua's heart was incomparably bitter. He also squatted down and said warmly, "Old man, the infant's life is no longer in danger. He can't eat too much of this jujube meat. You should eat it first." When the old man heard this, he looked at the infant's small tongue that was greedily licking his lips. He wanted to give more to the infant, but he was afraid that something might go wrong. He looked at Xiao Hua. "Hee with Xiao Ku here, I won't let anything happen to the infant." Xiao Hua said again. "Woo." The old man whimpered and finally swallowed the jujube meat that he had chewed for a long time. Sure enough, as soon as the jujube meat entered his stomach, it immediately rushed to his 4 limbs and bones like a flood. An incomparable comfort spread through his body and his 4 limbs suddenly had strength. The old man was wild with joy. He looked at the infant again and his eyes also opened. He even wanted to sit up. "Thank you, immortal elder." The old man no longer ignored him and bowed his head. "Don't." Xiao Hua hurriedly grabbed the old man and said with a smile, "Old man, you should eat another bite. There's no need to keep it all. Later, I will think of a way for you." Yes, the old man's own thoughts were exposed and he heard that Xiao Hua actually wanted to think of a way for him. His eyes lit up and he reluctantly ate another bite of the spirit jujube. After the old man finished eating the spirit jujube, he slightly closed his eyes and rested for a moment. The infant boy also sat up. Because of his skinny body, his large eyes looked around randomly. From time to time, he would look at Xue Xue and then at Xiao Hua. This old man's name is Fan Nong. This is this old man's grandson, heir. The old man rested and bowed. This old man thanks Immortal Elder and Immortal Elder for your great kindness. I also ask Immortal Elder to bestow names. This old man and grandson will definitely set up a longevity tablet for Immortal Elder, and we will worship you every day. Hee hee, Xiaohua flicked his sleeve and said, I's name is Xiaohua. This is I's lover Xue Xue. As for the longevity tablet, let's talk about it later. Old man, first tell I, why is this place so barren? AI, it's hard to explain in a few words. Fan Nong sighed. He pointed down the mountain and said, this old man lives in the Fan Manor at the foot of the mountain. Following Fan Nong's finger, in a depression at the foot of the mountain, there was a village. Scattered villages were scattered around in 2s and 3s. Xiaohua casually scanned with his divine sense and was about to ask again. But at this moment, Xiaohua's face slightly changed and he angrily said, Bastard. As he spoke, Xiaohua's figure suddenly flew up and quickly rushed down the mountain. That speed was definitely something Xue Xue had never seen before. Husband. Xue Xue covered her mouth again. She looked at Xiaohua in disbelief as his figure disappeared into one of the villages in the Fan Manor. A moment later, Xiaohua flew back again. His left hand was holding a baby in swaddling clothes and his right hand was holding a skinny woman. The woman's eyes were tightly closed and she seemed to have fainted. Husband, why is that? Xue Xue asked curiously. Xiaohua's face was very ugly. He didn't answer Xue Xue and handed the baby to Fan Nong and said, Old man, feed some of those dates to the baby. And, although Fan Nong was somewhat reluctant, he didn't dare to disobey Xiaohua's words. He took a small bite of the date meat and chewed it up to feed it to the baby. At the same time, Xiaohua pointed at the woman. The woman sitting on the ground opened her eyes. However, the woman's face was ashen and there was no light in her eyes. She glanced at Xiaohua and then at the baby in Fan Nong's hand. Let this Xiao ask you, Xiaohua said coldly, since ancient times, even an evil tiger wouldn't eat its cubs. Why did you kill your own baby? Ah? Xue Xue was shocked and looked at the dark and skinny woman in disbelief. The woman didn't pay attention to Xiaohua and struggled to get up. However, after moving a few times, she didn't seem to have any strength. She sat down again and her ash-white eyes turned a few times and a trace of ridicule appeared. That ridicule angered Xiaohua. Xiaohua said coldly, This Xiao knows that you have been starving for a long time. If you don't eat, you will die. However, can you bear to eat your own flesh and blood? Or are you still human? Ha! The woman laughed mournfully. Of course I'm not human. Why would I be human? Saying this, she threw herself on the ground and wept weakly. Taoist Xiao. Fan Nong saw this and said in a low voice, I'm afraid Taoist Xiao has misunderstood Qianshi. She and Qian Er have always been filial. Who wants to use the child to feed his mother, right? Ah? Xue Xue couldn't help but exclaim, Then what about Qian Er? I'll let Fairy Xue know, Fan Nong said mournfully. If this old man's guess is correct, Qian Er, I'm afraid, is already in his mother's stomach. Xue Xue didn't exclaim this time. Her right hand trembled slightly and her eyes flashed with an indescribable brilliance. AI, this Xiao was wrong. Hearing this, Xiaohua's divine sense immediately swept out again. He saw an old woman lying on the ground in the village house on the verge of death. He sighed and bowed towards Qianshi. How could you immortals be wrong? It's all us mortals who are wrong. Qianshi didn't seem to appreciate it and said coldly, Even if we ate our own flesh and blood, if there weren't any spirit stones, you definitely wouldn't do anything. You are naturally free and unfettered. Why would you care about our lives? Now, even if you saved my boy, can you save this Nujia? Can you save this Nujia's mother? Can you save the dozens of old and young in my Fan Manor? Can you revive the villagers who starved to death? Chapter 2083. Qianshi's words were weak, but when Xiaohua heard every word, for some reason he felt ashamed in his heart. Yes, he was a golden core cultivator and could kill cultivators with low cultivation at will. He could fly in the sky and burrow into the ground, carefree and unfettered, and could view mortals as ants. But what did that count for? In this world, would he be able to save the common people? What was the use of Cultivator's cultivation? Xue Xue was even more unbearable. She had never faced this mortal world and had never seen such a cruel situation. She also never thought that under the same blue sky, while she was dancing with her lover, there were many mortals in the mortal world who were in an abyss of suffering, on the brink of death, in a situation where they had to eat raw human flesh to fill their stomachs. In the time it took to smoke a cigarette, Qianshi's sobs had gradually stopped due to her lack of strength. Xiaohua then came to his senses and sighed, "Excellent. Although I am powerless to reverse the situation now, I will definitely cultivate with all my might and hope that there will be a day when I have the power to reverse the situation. Moreover, today, with my ability, I will definitely spare your lives." Yes, if they were mortals, how could they have any methods? Only cultivators had the power to resist this natural disaster. The stronger Xiaohua was, the more authority he had to speak. Can you make rain? Can you make rice grow in a barren land? Qianshi asked again. Even the immortal elders of Misty Cloud sect wouldn't dare to boast like this, right? Ha! At this moment, Xiaohua was even more enlightened. He knew that there must be some secrets that he didn't know, so he laughed and said, "Since I said it, I will definitely be able to do it. Let's not talk about anything else, let's save you first. Husband, I will stay here to take care of things. You should quickly go to Yu City to buy food. With husband's speed, you will be able to return quickly." Xue Xue said anxiously. "Food." Xiaohua muttered to himself for a moment, then his eyes lit up and he said with a smile, "Why is it so troublesome? Moreover, if I leave, I'm afraid that many people will die in a short while." After saying that, Xiaohua waved his hand, and the dozen or so half-dead seedlings in Fan Nong's field were collected into his space. Then he flew in front of Fan Nong and said with a smile, "Old man, come with this Xiao. Let's first rescue the dead people in your fan manor." "Yes, I will follow your orders." Fan Nong returned the baby to Mrs. Qian, stood up and smiled apologetically. Thus, Xiaohua grabbed Fan Nong's collar and flew down the mountain. In the time it took to eat a meal, Xiaohua brought Fan Nong back to the farmland. Xue Xue hurriedly stepped forward and asked, "Husband, what's the situation?" Xiaohua had a bitter smile on his face as he replied, "There are only a few spirit jujubes, and there are too many people who are about to die. Your husband can only choose a few seriously hungry old men or infant boy. I can't take care of the others for the time being." "Then what should we do?" Xue Xue was originally kind. Previously, she treated the common people like ants. Although she didn't pity the common people like Xiaohua, she still became anxious and said, "Husband, you should hurry and go. This concubine will guard this place. I definitely won't let any of them die." "Wife, do you have any good methods?" Xiaohua's eyes brightened, and he said with a smile, "Could it be that you still have some snacks from Sun Lei Palace?" Xue Xue's face reddened, and she vigorously shook her head. "AI, we can be considered to have some success in our cultivation." Xiaohua sighed. "However, all of our magic arts are offensive, and all of them are for self-protection." What kind of magic art can help others? Can it save people? After saying that, Xiaohua swung his big sleeve and used the water spike technique. A large area of blue ice spikes appeared and lined up in midair. Following Xiaohua's hand seals, balls of water condensed on the farmland. These balls of water contained abundant heaven and earth ling qi, and their offensive power was also shocking. However, how could these balls of water nourish the soil? Even if they nourished the several zhang of land in front of them, what about the terraced fields of the entire mountain range? What about the entire Fan Manor's farmland? A feeling of powerlessness spontaneously arose in his heart. Amitabha, Xiaohua involuntarily chanted the name of Buddha in his heart and sat cross-legged. "Husband." Xue Xue saw that not only did Xiaohua not leave to search for food, but he also sat cross-legged. She couldn't help but be shocked. However, she had always regarded Xiaohua as her leader, so she definitely wouldn't say anything that went against Xiaohua. Therefore, she only hesitated for a moment before stopping. On the side, Qianshi had already heard Fan Nong's words and knew that her mother-in-law had already been saved by Xiaohua. Panic and gratitude appeared on her dark and thin face, and her eyes were filled with incomparable love as she looked at the child in her arms. Those tears flowed down. If it weren't for the fact that she had no other choice, how could she take her own child? Very quickly, several hours passed, and the sky was already dark. Xiaohua was still regulating his breathing. Fan Nong's grandson was hungry again, and he hid in Fan Nong's arms and gnashed his teeth. Qianshi lifted her lapel and used her thin and shriveled breast to feed the child. However, she also hadn't eaten for a long time and was barely surviving on grass. How could she have breast to feed the child? And the child was just used to sucking. He hadn't tasted breast for a long time. Wah wah. The infant boy wept powerlessly, and Qianshi gently coaxed him. All kinds of desolation were displayed in the cold wind. Immortal elder, Qianshi clenched her teeth and walked in front of Xiaohua. With a plop, she knelt down again. Seeing this, Fan Nong also moved over and knelt down with Immortal elder, please have mercy. This lowly servant knows that Immortal elder can do it. This lowly servant also knows that Immortal elder is different from Misty Cloud's sex Immortal elder. You have a merciful heart. Qianshi gathered her words and cried, this lowly servant and the others are all mortals. We don't have any spirit stones that Immortal elder needs, but this lowly servant is willing to exchange her life for his. As long as Immortal elder can save this lowly servant's mother-in-law and child, this lowly servant is willing to follow Immortal elder and be ordered by Immortal elder. Qianshi kowtowed, Fan Nong did the same, and even curled up his shriveled body and kowtowed with all his strength. Sister-in-law. Xiaohua flicked his sleeves and supported everyone. He opened his starry eyes and smiled. Since this Xiao has already reached out, I must intervene. How can this Xiao be the unbearable person that you speak of? Then, Xiaohua flicked his hand, and a large pile of rice appeared in front of them. It was at least 1 zhang in radius. Ah? Not only Qianshi and Fan Nong, but even Shui was shocked. She looked at the rice that seemed to have just been harvested in disbelief. This Xiao has been traveling all this way and didn't care about worldly food, so I didn't dare to leave easily. You can eat this rice first. It should be enough for a few days. This Xiao will go out now and see if I can find more food. Xiaohua said with a smile. Taoist Xiao, Qianshi and Fan Nong were so happy that they shed tears. They kowtowed and said, we were blinded by greed and actually misunderstood Taoist's kindness. We really deserve to die. Chapter 2084. And just wait for me. Xiaohua helped the two of them up and said to Shui, wife, I'll have to trouble you to take care of the rice. Your husband will go out and find some food. But Shui was happy to see that she could help. She urged Xiaohua to leave while she put the rice into her storage pouch and flew back to Fan Manor with Madame Qian and the others. Not to mention Fan Nong and the people of Fan Manor taking care of the rice, Xiaohua flew into the sky with a heavy heart and flew towards Yu City. His mind entered the space again. At this time, many puppets were moving. They were reclaiming the remaining land in the space piece by piece. On each piece of land, there was a puppet responsible for planting rice and harvesting rice. Xiaohua's space was originally conducive to the growth of spiritual plants. Ordinary rice like this could mature in just a few hours. However, the rice seedlings that Xiaohua obtained from Fan Nong's terraced fields were too little. Moreover, although Xiaohua asked Fan Nong how to plant rice, it was different from the planting method in his memory. He had no choice but to use the pond water that he obtained from Immortal Black Forest to form paddy fields. Then, he began to use the puppets to try to plant rice clumsily. These pitiful puppets that ordinary aura-refining cultivators trembled in fear when they saw them. At this time, they were actually doing the work of a peasant. If Emoching Yuan knew, he would probably fly over from the North Desert to fight Xiaohua. Alas, there are still not enough puppets. Xiaohua pulled his mind out of the space and sighed, these rice can't save many people. It's better to go find food. Xiaohua left for an entire night. The next day, when the sun was high in the sky, Xiaohua returned to Fan Manor with a worried expression. At this time, Fan Zhuang had already recovered some of its vitality. Many of the more robust farmers were processing the rice in the paddy field. When they saw Xiaohua flying over, they all threw down their farming tools and kowtowed. They thanked Taoist Xiao. The corners of Xiaohua's mouth curled into a smile. He used his big sleeve to help everyone up, and with a wave of his hand, he took out piles and piles of grains and piled them on the ground. Moreover, in the midst of everyone's cheers, he took out several cows from his spirit storage pouch. Alas, it's really hard on Xiaohua. He's actually still thinking about those babies who are drinking milk in his heart. Perhaps the shriveled black and skinny from last night had left an unforgettable mark in his heart. Husband, Xue Xue's face was also filled with joy as she flew over. Clearly, she was very satisfied with helping the world and saving people yesterday. However, when she saw the worried expression on Xiaohua's face, she was slightly stunned. She turned and asked in a low voice, "What's going on? Didn't he already get the food?" Alas! Xiaohua sighed and replied, "All along the way, we only coveted the beautiful scenery and were free and unfettered, and we've never paid attention to the hardships of the mortal world. Last night, I didn't dare to fly too far away, so I only checked around you city. This disaster seems to be much more serious than we thought." "Husband, what do you mean?" Xue Xue's face tightened as she asked anxiously. "It's not just the Fan Manor that's suffering from the disaster. There are many places around you city that are suffering from the disaster." Xiaohua waved his hand and said, "It's just that the Fan Manor is extremely inconvenient. Fan Nong and the others can't travel far, so many people have starved to death. Although other places are on the verge of collapse, there are still people starving to death." "The food?" Xue Xue asked quietly. Xiaohua smiled. "I found all of these with my divine sense. They belong to those rich families. I took some from each family, so it won't affect them in any way." "That's good." Xue Xue smiled. "I was worried that you would harm those people after saving them." "How could I?" Xiaohua smiled. "My wife, you've worked hard too." "Alas, it's nothing." Xue Xue sighed again. "I've never thought that the mortal world would be like this. Compared to them, my life is really like an immortal." "That's right." Xiaohua was just about to speak when Fan Nong quickly walked over with a few white-haired old men. Several people didn't even wait for them to get close before bowing and kowtowing. How could Xiaohua let them kowtow? He hurriedly waved his sleeve to stop them. The old man in front saw that they couldn't kowtow, so he smiled respectfully and said, "I'm the leader of the Fan Manor. My name is Fan Yunxiao. Yesterday, thanks to Reverend Xiaohua's grace, I didn't die on the spot. Also, I've just received news that Reverend Xiaohua has brought countless food. My Fan Manor is finally safe in Reverend Xiaohua's hands. I've already told everyone in the Fan Manor to not only remember Reverend Xiaohua's grace in their hearts, but also to set up a longevity tablet in everyone's home. They must pray to God day and night to bring blessings to Reverend Xiaohua." Xiaohua naturally wouldn't take this kind of statement seriously. He smiled and helped the old man up, saying, "Old man Fan, please rise. As long as I can contribute 30% of my strength, I definitely won't slack off 20%. To be able to see my fellow villagers living a peaceful life, I am happy in my heart. Reverend Xiaohua is really a kind person." Fan Yunxiao said with tears of gratitude. Xiaohua politely said a few more words before instructing, "Sir Fan, although this humble Taoist has obtained this rice, it is still limited in the end. In this humble Taoist's opinion, if the healthy people have already rested, it would be better to plant this rice as soon as possible. While the current season is still good, we will be able to harvest a season of crops before winter." "Ah? Reverend Xiaohua, you're an otherworldly person. You actually know about my farming?" Fan Yunxiao said in astonishment. "Ah, Xiao Hua didn't explain. But Fan Yunxiao's face was bitter. He said in a low voice, "It's not that my Fan Manor's children are lazy. Even if the rice is planted, if there's no rain, the rice won't grow." Oh. Xiao Hua nodded. After thinking for a moment, he asked, "Fan Manor's drought, how long has it been?" AI, it's hard to explain in a few words. Fan Yunxiao sighed. He found a place to sit down and tirelessly explained the cause of the matter. It turned out that Fan Manor used to be a place with plenty of food. Although it was inconvenient to move around in the surrounding 10 li, the weather was good and there weren't any special disasters. However, 10 years ago, the weather began to change. Now and then there would be floods and droughts. It was no longer the same weather as before. Last year, it was even more serious. There wasn't even a drop of rain. Fan Manor's old folks didn't even have a harvest. They even had to take out the seeds they had stored for many years to eat. Fan Nong, whom Xiao Hua first saw, could only rely on the water from the well on the mountain to barely preserve some seedlings of rice. Moreover, according to Fan Yunxiao, there was a cultivation sect near Yu City called the Misty Cloud sect. They once came to Fan Manor and said that as long as the people of Fan Manor paid a certain amount of spirit stones every year, they could guarantee that there would be rain in Fan Manor's terraced fields. However, Fan Manor's secular people didn't have any spirit stones. After pleading to no avail and taking out gold and silver, the Misty Clouds sect's cultivators left. What made Xiao Hua most angry was that a month ago, the Misty Clouds sect's cultivators came once. Even though they saw Fan Manor's miserable state, they still didn't show any expression. They coldly looked at them for a few times and didn't even say a word before flying away. It was precisely because of this that Qian Shi looked at Xiao Hua with such cold eyes. Because in her heart, all cultivators were cold and indifferent, treating them as if they were nothing. Misty Cloud sect? Xiao Hua slightly frowned. He didn't seem to have heard of this Meng country's cultivation sect from the cultivators. It should be a small sect, but they could actually make rain. They could do something that Xiao Hua, a gold core cultivator, couldn't do. Could it be they were swindled? Xiao Hua stroked his chin and frowned as he pondered. But thinking about it, even if the Misty Clouds sect's disciples wanted to swindle, there was no need to swindle these secular people. Elder Fan, Xiao Hua asked, "This Misty Clouds sect's cultivators can really make rain? Have you seen it before?" "This old man doesn't have any spirit stones here, so naturally I haven't seen it before," Fan Yunxiao said with sweat. "However, I've heard from people far away that when the Misty Clouds sect's immortals waved their hands, countless clouds would fly out from their sleeves. The clouds could cover the entire mountain. I know that when the immortals blow, the clouds can make rain. And this Xiao understands." Xiao Hua slightly nodded and transmitted his voice to Xue Xue. This way, the Misty Clouds sect must have a magic treasure that can move clouds and make rain. The Misty Clouds sect's disciples are guarding this gift from the heavens, but they don't favor the living beings. Then this husband will go and take that magic treasure and make rain for the living beings. Usually, Xiao Hua was silent and sometimes even deliberately hid his strength and did not reveal it. But at this time, for the sake of irrelevant people, he was actually full of lofty sentiments. Xue Xue's eyes unconsciously lit up. She couldn't help but deepen her admiration for her sweetheart. This concubine will wait here. Xue Xue knew that she would only cause trouble if she went, so she said with a smile, "Wait for my husband's triumphant return." Definitely," Xiao Hua said with a smile. "This husband will definitely step on 7-colored auspicious clouds and return with rain and dew." Seeing Xiao Hua's relaxed appearance, Xue Xue's heart also relaxed. She knew that Xiao Hua was very confident in himself. Moreover, when she thought of the lightning escape technique that Xiao Hua revealed yesterday, she saw that it was much faster than her master Sun Ming. Even if he couldn't succeed, escaping with his life wouldn't be a problem. Xue Xue only said, "Be careful, my husband," before sending Xiao Hua away. When Xiao Hua flew out of Yu City, his face showed a dignified expression. He had inquired clearly in Yu City. The Misty Cloud sect was indeed not a big sect, but a small sect on the Green Cloud Mountain far away from Yu City. However, the sect master of this small sect was not simple. He was a late-stage Foundation establishment realm cultivator. However, this was not the key point that Xiaohua was worried about. The Misty Clouds sect was slightly different from other sections. They had inherited the ancient talisman crafting technique. It was said that the sect could refine extremely powerful talismans. Of course, this was only a rumor because the sect master of the Misty Clouds sect, Yun Tingyu, was only a late-stage Foundation establishment realm cultivator. No matter how powerful his talisman crafting technique was, he was not Xiaohua's opponent. However, the problem was that Xiaohua wanted to find out the secret of the Misty Clouds sect's technique, so he had to face the entire Misty Clouds sect. Xiaohua couldn't really treat the cultivators as nothing and flatten the Misty Clouds sect. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Immortal Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.